The night Evelyn Carter's life shattered, she was wearing a dead woman's perfume. One spray. That's all it took to draw a monster from the shadows, a man so dangerous that his arrival cleared an entire restaurant in seconds. Adrian Vale locked the doors with her inside, his dark eyes fixed on the scent lingering on her skin. In that moment, between the abandoned tables and flickering candles, Evelyn realized her grandmother had left her more than memories. She'd left her a target. This is the story of how one fragrance changed everything. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Sal's diner buzzed with their familiar electrical hum, a sound Evelyn Carter had learned to tune out somewhere between her second and third year of working there. It was 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and the dinner rush had finally died down to a manageable scatter of regulars. Old Mr. Henderson nursing his fourth coffee in the corner booth, a young couple sharing a slice of key lime pie, and 3 college students hunched over laptops, making a single order of fries last 3 hours. Evelyn's feet ached in a way that had become so constant she barely registered it anymore. She moved through the narrow aisles between tables with practiced efficiency, her body on autopilot, while her mind calculated and recalculated the same depressing mathematics it did every night. Shift wages. $2.13 per hour plus tips. Tonight's tips so far, $67. Rent due in 4 days, $1,200. Mom's hospital payment this month, $3,400. Insurance covered some, but the copays were crushing. The new medication the doctor recommended, the one that might actually help, not covered at all. She was drowning in debt, and no matter how many double shifts she pulled, the water kept rising. "Evie, honey, you look dead on your feet," called Maria from behind the counter. The older woman's voice carried the particular warmth of someone who'd seen too many young waitresses burn out in this place. "Why don't you take your break? It's quiet enough." Evelyn glanced at the clock. Her official break wasn't for another 20 minutes, but Maria was right. The night had settled into that lull between dinner and the late-night crowd. She nodded gratefully and headed toward the back, untying her apron as she went. The break room was barely larger than a closet, with a rickety table, 2 chairs that didn't match, and a refrigerator that hummed louder than it had any right to. Evelyn collapsed into one of the chairs and pulled out her phone, immediately regretting it when she saw the notifications. 2 missed calls from Miami General, a text from her mother's nurse, another email from the billing department. Her thumb hovered over the voicemail icon, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. Not yet. She needed just 5 minutes where she wasn't drowning. Instead, she found herself scrolling through photos, stopping on one from 3 years ago, before the diagnosis, before the debt, before everything fell apart. Her mother stood in their small kitchen, laughing at something off camera, looking healthy and whole, and completely unaware of what was coming. "I'm trying, Mom," Evelyn whispered to the image. "I'm trying so hard." Her eyes burned, but she blinked the tears back. Crying didn't pay bills, crying didn't cure cancer. She stood and moved to her locker, needing something, anything, to distract herself. That's when she saw it, tucked in the back corner where she'd shoved it weeks ago. The small crystal bottle her grandmother had left her. Evelyn's grandmother, Elena, had died 6 months ago at the age of 83. They hadn't been close. Elena had always been distant, locked in some private world of memories she refused to share. But when the lawyer had read the will, there had been one item specifically designated for Evelyn, a vintage perfume bottle with no label and a handwritten note that said only, "For when you need to remember who you are." At the time, Evelyn had thought it was typical grandmother mysticism, the kind of cryptic wisdom old people dispensed when they couldn't offer anything practical. She'd tucked it away and forgotten about it. Now, on impulse, she pulled it out. The bottle was beautiful, she had to admit, crystal cut in an Art Deco style that caught the harsh fluorescent light and fractured it into rainbows. The liquid inside was amber-colored, and when she pulled the stopper, the scent that emerged was unlike anything she'd encountered before. It wasn't flowery or sweet. It was deeper than that, more complex. There were notes of jasmine and something darker, sandalwood maybe, or cedar. But underneath was something else, something she couldn't identify. It smelled expensive. It smelled old. It smelled like secrets. "What were you trying to tell me, Grandma?" Evelyn murmured, spraying a small amount on her wrists. The scent settled on her skin, warming with her body heat, transforming into something even more intoxicating. For just a moment, Evelyn felt different, taller, stronger, like she was wearing armor instead of a stained waitress uniform. The feeling lasted exactly 30 seconds before reality crashed back in. "Evie," Maria's voice carried from the front. "We've got a situation out here." Evelyn shoved the bottle back in her locker and hurried out, expecting to find Mr. Henderson complaining about his coffee temperature again, or one of the college kids trying to use an expired coupon. What she found instead stopped her in her tracks. The diner had gone completely silent. Every customer was on their feet, moving toward the exit in a strange, orderly procession. No one was running or panicking, but there was something wrong in their synchronized movement, like they'd all received the same silent command. "What's happening?" Evelyn asked, but Maria just shook her head, her face pale. "I don't know. Some men came in, showed me something, a badge maybe, I couldn't really see, and told me everyone needed to leave. They said it was official business." "What kind of official business requires clearing a diner?" Evelyn moved toward the window and immediately understood Maria's fear. 3 black SUVs were parked outside, the kind with windows too dark to see through. Men in expensive suits flanked the entrance, their postures radiating authority and something more dangerous, violence held carefully in check. And then he walked in. Evelyn didn't know how she knew he was the one in charge. Maybe it was the way the other men straightened almost imperceptibly when he appeared. Maybe it was the cut of his suit, which probably cost more than she made in 6 months. Or maybe it was simply the way he moved, like someone who'd never been told no in his entire life and wouldn't know what to do with the word if he heard it. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was just beginning to show silver at the temples. His face was striking in a way that went beyond handsome. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so dark they looked black in the diner's harsh lighting. He couldn't have been more than 40, but he carried himself with the certainty of someone who'd built empires and destroyed opposition. Adrian Vale. The name came to her unbidden, though she had no idea how she knew it. "Everyone out," he said quietly, and despite the low volume of his voice, it carried through the entire space with absolute authority. The last few stragglers hurried toward the exit. Maria grabbed her purse, gave Evelyn a worried look, and followed them. "You too," one of the suited men said to Evelyn, gesturing toward the door. But Adrian raised one hand slightly, and the man fell silent immediately. Adrian was staring at Evelyn with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He took a step closer, then another, his head tilting slightly as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Lock the doors," he said, still looking at her. "Sir, there's still—" one of his men began. "Lock the doors." The command was absolute. Evelyn heard the heavy click of the deadbolts sliding into place, the sound impossibly loud in the empty diner. They were alone now, just Evelyn, Adrian, and his men posted at the exits like sentries. Adrian moved closer, and Evelyn's body finally caught up with her brain, instinct screaming at her to run. But there was nowhere to go. The doors were locked. The windows didn't open. She was trapped. "What do you want?" she managed, proud that her voice didn't shake despite the fear coursing through her veins. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he circled her slowly, deliberately, and then she realized what he was doing. He was breathing in, scenting her. "Where did you get that perfume?" His voice was low, controlled, but she could hear something underneath, shock perhaps, or something darker. What? "The perfume you're wearing, where did you get it?" Evelyn's hand automatically went to her wrist, where she'd sprayed her grandmother's gift. "It was my grandmother's. Why does it matter? Who are you?" "Your grandmother's name." "I don't have to tell you anything. This is insane. You can't just—" "Her name." The words were soft, but carried a weight that made Evelyn's breath catch. "Elena. Elena Petrov, before she married. Look, I don't know what this is about, but I have nothing to do with—" She stopped because Adrian's expression had changed completely. The controlled mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw underneath. Recognition, disbelief, and what might have been grief. "Elena Petrov," he repeated, almost to himself. "She's dead?" "6 months ago. How did you know her?" Adrian was silent for a long moment, his jaw working like he was processing information too large to fit in his mind. When he finally looked at Evelyn again, his eyes had hardened back into that impenetrable darkness. "You have no idea what you've inherited, do you? It's just a perfume. My grandmother left me a bottle of perfume. That's it. That's all." "That perfume," Adrian said slowly, "was created specifically for your grandmother by a master perfumer in Paris in 1982. Only 3 bottles were ever made. Each one was worth more than this entire building, but the value isn't in the ingredients or the rarity." He moved closer, close enough that Evelyn could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something crisp and expensive that made her grandmother's perfume seem almost wild in comparison. "The value is in what it represents. That scent is a signature, a calling card. It marked your grandmother as untouchable in a world where very few things are sacred." "I don't understand. My grandmother was a seamstress. She lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Little Havana. She didn't have money or power or—" "Your grandmother," Adrian interrupted, "was Elena Petrov of the Volkov family. Before she disappeared in 1983, she was one of the most powerful women in the Eastern European syndicate operations on the East Coast. And that perfume you're wearing, it's the only thing that kept her alive when she walked away." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and absolute. Evelyn laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound bubbled up hysterically because this was insane. This man was insane. "My grandmother was not a criminal. She came to America from Russia in the 70s. She worked in a clothing factory. She raised my mother alone after my grandfather died, and she lived a quiet life." "You have the wrong person." "I have exactly the right person." Adrian pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward her. The photograph was old, the colors slightly faded with time. It showed a woman in her late 20s standing next to a man in an expensive suit. The woman was stunning, dark hair, sharp eyes, a smile that held secrets. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Evelyn's car, and around her neck was a diamond necklace that caught the camera's flash like a constellation. The woman was unmistakably Evelyn's grandmother. "That was taken at the Rostov estate in 1981, Adrian said quietly. "Your grandmother attended as the guest of Mikhail Volkov himself. She wasn't a seamstress then. She was his right hand, his strategist. Some people said she was the real power behind the throne." Evelyn stared at the photo, her mind rejecting what her eyes could clearly see. That was Grandma Elena, younger, glamorous, but definitely her. The same high cheekbones, the same slight dimple in her left cheek, the same way she held her head. "This doesn't make sense. Why would she leave all that? Why would she—" "Because she got smart," Adrian interrupted. "In 1983, there was a power struggle. Mikhail was killed. Your grandmother saw the writing on the wall and disappeared before the bloodbath truly began. She took nothing but that perfume and the knowledge that as long as she wore it, certain people would leave her alone." "What people?" "People like me." The confession hung between them, and Evelyn finally understood exactly how much danger she was in. "You're part of it. Whatever organization, whatever world my grandmother left behind, you're part of it." "I've been part of it since I was born," Adrian said simply. "And now, whether you want to be or not, you are too." "No." Evelyn shook her head, backing away. "No, I'm not anything. I'm a waitress. I take care of my mother. I have nothing to do with any of this." "You wore the perfume. You activated a signal that's been dormant for 40 years. Every organization that still remembers the Volkov family now knows Elena's bloodline still exists. And trust me, not all of them will be as courteous as I'm being." "Then I'll get rid of it. I'll throw the bottle away. "It's too late for that." Adrian's voice was almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. "The scent is already out there. The knowledge is already spreading. By morning, every major player from Miami to New York will know." Evelyn's legs felt weak. She grabbed the back of a chair for support, her mind racing through impossible scenarios, each one worse than the last. "What do they want from me? I don't know anything about my grandmother's past. I don't have money or connections or—" "You have blood," Adrian said. "You're a direct descendant of the Volkov line. In our world, blood is currency. Blood is power. Blood is a claim to territory, operations, and debts owed that go back decades. I don't want any of it. That's irrelevant. Want doesn't enter into it. You exist. That's enough." Evelyn looked at this stranger, This dangerous, powerful man who'd locked her in her own workplace and dismantled her entire understanding of her family, and made a decision. Then I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything you just told me. Adrian's laugh was short and bitter. The police? You think the police can protect you from this? From people who've been operating above the law for 3 generations? Be realistic, Evelyn. The use of her name, so casual and familiar despite them being strangers, sent a chill down her spine. How do you know my name? I know everything about you. I know you work 3 jobs trying to pay for your mother's treatment. I know she has stage 3 pancreatic cancer and the prognosis isn't good. I know you're $47,000 in medical debt and that number grows every month. I know you haven't taken a real day off in 18 months. I know you're drowning. The accuracy of it all made her stomach turn. You've been watching me? Not until tonight. But when you wore that perfume, you put up a flare that every intelligence network in this hemisphere saw. I had my people pull your background before I even arrived. It's what we do. We, Evelyn repeated hollowly. You keep saying we, like I'm supposed to understand what that means. Adrian studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, less interrogator, more something else, something almost like concern. Sit down. You look like you're about to fall over. I don't want to sit down. I want to wake up from whatever nightmare this is. It's not a nightmare. It's just a different reality than the one you thought you lived in. He pulled out a chair from a nearby table and sat, gesturing for her to do the same. Please, I'm not going to hurt you. Forgive me if I don't find that particularly reassuring coming from someone who had my workplace cleared at gunpoint. We didn't use guns, and I cleared it to protect them, not threaten them. If this conversation had happened with witnesses, those witnesses would have become liabilities. I'm sure you can imagine what happens to liabilities in my world. Or Evelyn didn't want to imagine, but her mind provided the images anyway. She sat, more because her legs couldn't hold her anymore than because she trusted him. Why are you here? She asked finally. If I'm such a problem, if my existence is going to cause all this trouble, why not just handle it? Isn't that what people like you do? Something dangerous flashed in Adrian's eyes. People like me? Criminals, murderers, whatever you are. I'm a businessman with complicated portfolio holdings. His tone was dry, almost amused. And I'm here because I owed your grandmother a debt. She saved my life once, a very long time ago. I was 15, stupid, and in the wrong place when a rival family decided to make a statement. Elena got me out. She didn't have to. It wasn't strategic. She just did it. He leaned back in the cheap diner chair, looking absurdly out of place in his expensive suit. I never got the chance to pay her back. She disappeared the next year, and I've spent 4 decades wondering what happened to her. So no, Evelyn Carter, I'm not going to handle you. I'm going to protect you, whether you want me to or not. I don't need protection from a criminal. You need protection from criminals far worse than me. And like it or not, I'm your best option. Possibly your only option. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to leave and take his black SUVs and his impossible revelations with him. But she was smart enough to know the truth when she heard it. Her life had changed the moment she'd put on that perfume. The question now was what she was going to do about it. What happens next? She asked quietly. Next, you come with me. I have a secure location where we can talk properly, where I can explain exactly what you're facing and what your options are. And if I refuse? Then you go back to your apartment, and by tomorrow morning, you'll have at least 3 different organizations watching you, waiting to see what you know, what you have, and how they can use you. Some will try to recruit you, some will try to buy you, and some... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. This is insane, Evelyn whispered. But even as she said it, she knew she was going to go with him. What choice did she have? Insanity is relative, Adrian said, standing and offering her his hand. In my world, this is just Thursday. Evelyn stared at his hand for a long moment, well-manicured, strong, offering both salvation and damnation in equal measure. Finally, she took it. His grip was warm and firm, and when he pulled her to her feet, she caught that scent again, the expensive cologne mixing with something uniquely him. For just a second, she wondered what her grandmother would think of this moment. Then she remembered. Her grandmother had lived this life, had breathed this air, had made choices that echoed across 40 years to land Evelyn in this exact spot. "I need to call my mother's nurse," Evelyn said. "She'll worry if I don't check in." "You can call from the car." "I need to get my things from the back." "One of my people will get them. We need to leave now, Evelyn. The longer we stay here, the more exposed you are." He guided her toward the door, his hand at her back, protective but unmistakably controlling. One of his men unlocked the deadbolt and held the door open. The Miami night air hit her face, humid and thick with the promise of rain. The SUVs waited, engines running, dark and sleek and utterly foreign to her world. "Wait." Evelyn stopped at the threshold, one foot in her old life, one foot stepping towards something unknown. "My grandmother. You said she was powerful, that she was important, but she died in a state-subsidized nursing home with nothing but memories and that perfume bottle. If she was really who you say she was, why did she end up like that?" Adrian's expression softened in a way that made him look younger, more human. "Because she chose you. Chose your mother. Chose a quiet life where the only legacy that mattered was family. She could have reclaimed power any time in those 40 years. People would have followed her, but she didn't. She stayed hidden, stayed small, stayed safe, until she couldn't anymore." "What do you mean?" "The nursing home bills. They were paid, Evelyn. Not by Medicare, not by the state. By a trust fund Elena set up decades ago, one that ran out exactly 3 months before she died. She timed it perfectly. Enough money to care for her until the end, but not enough to draw attention or leave a trail that would lead to you." Evelyn's breath caught. "She was protecting me even then?" "Until her last breath. And now it's my turn to do the same." He ushered her into the back of the middle SUV, sliding in beside her. The door closed with a heavy, final sound. Through the tinted windows, Evelyn watched the diner recede. Maria would be back inside by now, probably wondering what the hell had just happened, probably calling the owner to report the strangest night of her career. Evelyn Carter's last normal moment disappeared into the Miami darkness. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," Adrian replied. "Somewhere we can figure out how to keep you alive." The SUV pulled away from the curb, flanked by its twins, and Evelyn realized with crystal clarity that everything she'd known, everything she'd been, had just become history. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, probably Maria, probably worried, probably offering an escape route back to normalcy. Evelyn didn't reach for it. Instead, she sat in the leather seat that cost more than her monthly rent, next to a man who inhabited a world she'd never known existed, and wondered what her grandmother had seen in that moment when she'd decided to leave it all behind. Whatever it was, Evelyn was about to find out if she had the same strength. The city lights streaked past the window, each one a small piece of the life she was leaving behind. She thought of her mother, sleeping in that hospital bed, unaware that her daughter had just inherited a legacy written in blood and secrets. "I need to call the hospital," Evelyn said quietly. "I need to make sure someone will be there for my mother in the morning." Adrian pulled out his phone and handed it to her. "Use this. Your phone is compromised as of 30 minutes ago. They'll be tracking it." "They who?" "Everyone who matters." Evelyn took the phone with shaking hands and dialed the familiar number. When the night nurse answered, she kept her voice steady, kept the panic locked down deep. "Hi, Sarah, it's Evelyn Carter. I have an emergency tonight, a family thing. Can you make sure someone checks on my mom in the morning? I'll be there by afternoon." The lie came easier than she expected. Maybe that was in her blood too. When she hung up, Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're calmer than I expected," he said. "I'm a waitress in Miami. You learn to handle stress or you don't survive. This is just a different kind of stress." "Is it?" Evelyn turned to look at him fully, this stranger who claimed to hold her fate in his hands. "You said you owed my grandmother a debt. What exactly do you owe me?" "The truth, for starters. The full truth about who Elena Petrov was, what she did, and what that means for you now. And then? And then you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. Your grandmother chose family over power. You might choose differently." "You don't know me well enough to say that." "No," Adrian agreed. "But I'm going to." The SUV turned onto a highway heading north out of the city. Evelyn watched the familiar skyline disappear behind them, every mile taking her further from everything she'd known. "How did it feel?" she asked suddenly. "When she saved you. When my grandmother saved your life." Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old memories. Like being seen for the first time. Like someone looked at a stupid kid who'd made every wrong choice and decided he was worth saving anyway. She didn't ask for anything in return, didn't demand loyalty or service or gratitude. She just did it because it was right. And you've spent 40 years trying to pay that back. Yeah, I've spent 40 years trying to be the kind of person who deserved it. Something shifted in Evelyn's chest, a small crack in the terror letting in something else. Not trust exactly, but possibility. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I let you protect me, help me, whatever this is going to be, I need something in return. Name it." "My mother gets the best care available, no matter what it costs, no matter what happens to me. She doesn't suffer because of this." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something passed through his eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. "Done. I'll have my people arrange the transfer to a private facility tonight. She'll have round-the-clock nursing, the best oncologists in the country, and every treatment option available." "Just like that?" "Just like that." "Why?" Evelyn demanded. "Why would you spend that kind of money on someone you don't even know?" "Because 40 years ago, your grandmother saved my life without asking why. Because some debts can't be measured in currency. And because, Evelyn Carter, whether you realize it or not, you're about to be very valuable to me." The honesty was almost refreshing in its directness. "How valuable?" "That depends on what you choose to do with your inheritance." "I inherited a bottle of perfume." "You inherited a name that still carries weight in circles you don't know exist. You inherited blood that connects you to operations spanning 3 continents. You inherited secrets that died with your grandmother, except they didn't die, did they? Because you're here, and you're breathing, and you're asking the right questions." The SUV slowed, turning off the highway onto a private road. Through the windows, Evelyn could see high walls, security gates, and the kind of estate that existed in a different economic reality than the one she inhabited. "Where are we?" "My home. Or one of them, anyway. The most secure one I have in Florida." The gates swung open smoothly, and they drove through into a different world. Manicured lawns, subtle lighting, architecture that whispered wealth so old it didn't need to shout. Evelyn thought about her studio apartment with the broken air conditioning and the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of South America. This was insane. All of it was insane. But as the SUV pulled to a stop in front of a house that belonged in a magazine, as Adrian opened the door and offered his hand to help her out, as she stepped onto stone pavers that probably cost more per square foot than her monthly rent, Evelyn made a choice. She could break down. She could panic. She could demand to be taken back to her small, suffocating, familiar life. Or she could be her grandmother's granddaughter. She could be Elena Petrov's blood. She could survive. "All right," Evelyn said, taking Adrian's hand and stepping into this new world. "Tell me everything. Tell me who I really am." Adrian smiled then, a real smile that transformed his severe face into something almost warm. "Let's start at the beginning," he said, leading her toward the massive front doors. In 1978, a young woman named Elena Petrov arrived in New York from Moscow with nothing but a suitcase and a letter of introduction to Mikhail Volkov. The doors opened, and Evelyn crossed the threshold into a life she never knew existed. Somewhere in a Miami hospital, her mother slept peacefully, unaware that her daughter had just stepped into the legacy they'd both been running from for decades. And somewhere in the humid Florida night, other people in other cars were making plans for Evelyn Carter, plans that involved money and power, and the kind of violence that only existed in worlds where human life was just another commodity to be traded. But for now, in this moment, Evelyn was safe. For now, she had time to learn. For now, she had Adrian Vale standing between her and the darkness. The question was, how long would that last? And what would she become before the answer revealed itself? The interior of Adrian's estate was exactly what Evelyn expected, and nothing like she'd imagined at the same time. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment, with marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers and artwork on the walls that she suspected wasn't merely expensive, It was priceless. Yet despite the obvious wealth, there was something almost austere about the space. No clutter, no excess decoration. Everything served a purpose, commanded attention through quality rather than quantity. Adrian led her through hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly, his footsteps confident and familiar, while hers echoed with uncertainty. They passed rooms she could only glimpse, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, what looked like a formal dining room that could seat 20, a sitting area with windows overlooking gardens she couldn't see in the darkness. Finally, he opened a door to what appeared to be a study. Unlike the cold formality of the rest of the house, this room felt lived in. Papers covered a massive desk, bookshelves held volumes that showed actual wear, and a leather sofa faced a fireplace that, despite the Miami heat, contained the remnants of a recent fire. "Sit," Adrian said, gesturing to the sofa. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Coffee? Something stronger?" "Water," Evelyn said, her throat suddenly dry. She didn't trust herself with anything stronger, not when her entire world was spinning off its axis. Adrian moved to a small bar in the corner, returning with 2 glasses of water. He handed her one, then took the chair across from her, close enough to maintain intimacy, but far enough to avoid crowding her. The calculation in that distance wasn't lost on Evelyn. "Before we begin," Adrian said, "I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you will change how you see everything, your grandmother, your family, possibly yourself. Once you know, you can't unknow. Are you certain you want this?" Evelyn took a sip of water, buying herself a moment to think. But the answer was obvious. Had been obvious since she'd stepped into that SUV. "I'm already in this, aren't I? Whether I know the details or not, people are watching me, planning things. I'd rather face it with information than ignorance." "Smart," Adrian acknowledged. "Your grandmother would be proud." "You keep saying that, but I didn't know her, not really. She was just Grandma. She made tea too strong and kept hard candies in her purse and told me stories about Russia that all seemed like fairy tales. I never knew her." "You knew the version of herself she chose to show you, the version she became. But there was another Elena, one who existed long before you were born." Adrian leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes distant with memory. "The woman I met in 1982 was 28 years old and already legendary. She'd been in America for 4 years, and in that time she'd done what no one thought possible. She'd made herself indispensable to Mikhail Volkov." "Who was he?" "The head of the Volkov organization, one of the most powerful criminal enterprises on the East Coast. Russian émigrés mostly, but they had connections that stretched back to Moscow, to the old networks that predated even the Soviet fall. Mikhail was brilliant, ruthless, and paranoid as hell. He trusted no one." Adrian's lips curved into a slight smile. "Except Elena. She had something none of his lieutenants possessed. She could see patterns, predict outcomes, understand human nature in a way that was almost supernatural. She'd studied psychology in Moscow before she left. Did you know that?" Evelyn shook her head mutely. "She never finished her degree, but she understood people, what motivated them, what frightened them, how to manipulate or inspire them. Mikhail put her in charge of his most sensitive operations, negotiations with rival families, expansions into new territories, even internal security. She knew where everybody was buried, literally and figuratively." "That doesn't sound like the grandmother I knew." "Because she chose to leave it behind. In 1983, there was a power struggle within the organization. Mikhail's nephew, Victor, wanted control. He'd been building alliances, making promises, positioning himself for a coup. Elena saw it coming 6 months before it happened." Adrian stood, moving to the window as he spoke, his reflection ghostly in the dark glass. "She warned Mikhail, gave him names, dates, evidence. But Mikhail was arrogant. He thought his position was unassailable. He ignored her warnings, and in May of 1983, Victor struck. The purge lasted 3 days. 57 people died. Mikhail was found in his office with 3 bullets in his head." Evelyn felt sick. "And my grandmother? Should have died with the others. Victor's people came for her the same night they killed Mikhail. But Elena had planned for this possibility. She'd already created an escape route, a new identity, a way to disappear completely. She walked away from millions of dollars in assets, from power that most people spend their entire lives chasing. She became invisible." "How?" Adrian turned back to face her. The perfume. It was more than just a scent, it was a treaty. When Elena left, she made it known through certain channels that she wanted out completely. No involvement, no interference, no claims to what she'd left behind. In exchange, anyone who wore that perfume would be granted immunity. Untouchable. It was an old tradition, one that went back to the early days of organized crime in Europe. A mark of honor, of a debt paid, of someone who'd earned the right to walk away. But if it protected her, why did she live in poverty? Why did she die with nothing? Because visibility equals vulnerability. Any sign of wealth, any connection to her old life would have attracted attention. So she lived small, worked ordinary jobs, raised your mother in obscurity. The only thing she kept from her old life was that perfume, and she never wore it. It was insurance, nothing more. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She set the water glass down before she could drop it. My mother. Does she know any of this? No, Elena made sure of it. Your mother grew up thinking her father died in a factory accident, that they were just poor Russian immigrants trying to make it in America. Elena buried her past so deep that even her own daughter never suspected. Until she gave me the perfume. Until she gave you the perfume, Adrian confirmed. And that's where this gets complicated. He returned to his chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his intensity focused entirely on Evelyn. When you wore that scent tonight, you activated a signal that's been dormant for 40 years. Old players who remember the treaty, who remember what Elena was, they'll recognize it and honor it. But there are new powers now. Organizations that don't know the old rules, that see you as an opportunity rather than a person to be protected. What kind of opportunity? Elena left behind unfinished business, accounts that were never settled, territories that were never formally redistributed, information that only she possessed. If you're her heir, legally speaking, you could lay claim to all of it. Evelyn laughed bitterly. I don't want any of it. I just want my life back. I know, but it doesn't matter what you want. The moment you put on that perfume, you became a player whether you intended to or not. A sus thought struck Evelyn with the force of a physical blow. The federal agents, you said they'd start questioning me. Have they already? Not yet, but they will. The FBI has had organized crime task forces monitoring Russian operations for decades. Your grandmother's name would have been in their files, flagged as historical interest. When you appeared on their radar, someone would have made the connection. So what do I do? What are my options here? Adrian stood again, this time moving to his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder which he handed to Evelyn. These are your options. Option 1, witness protection. I can arrange for you to disappear completely. New name, new city, new life. Your mother would be cared for, but you'd never see her again. You'd never see anyone from your old life again. Oh, Evelyn's stomach twisted. No, absolutely not. I didn't think so. Option 2, you go public. Tell the FBI everything I've told you tonight, offer to cooperate with their investigations, hope they can protect you from the fallout. But federal protection is inconsistent at best, and you'd be painting a target on your back for every organization that wants to keep old secrets buried. What's option 3? Adrian's expression grew serious. You stay with me, under my protection, in my world. You learn how it works, who the players are, what resources you have at your disposal, and when the time comes, you decide what you want to do with your grandmother's legacy. You mean become a criminal? I mean become someone who can't be victimized. There's a difference. Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were documents, financial statements, property deeds, account numbers. The numbers made her head spin. What is all this? Assets that can be traced to Elena's time with the Volkov organization. Laundered and cleaned over the years, sitting in accounts that no one's touched because no one had the right to claim them. If you wanted to, you could access this money. Not all of it. Some has been absorbed by other operations, but enough to change your life considerably. The number at the bottom of the first page read $8,400,000. Evelyn's vision blurred. This can't be real. It's very real. Your grandmother was careful. She knew that if she ever needed to disappear, she'd need resources. She created layers of protection, shell companies, trusts. Most of the money is legitimately earned now. Investments, real estate, businesses that have been operating legally for decades. If she had access to this, why did she die in a state nursing home? Why did she let my mother struggle? because accessing it would have required revealing herself. The moment Elena touched that money, she'd have been exposed. So she let it sit, untouched, until someone with the right blood came along to claim it. Me. You. Evelyn closed the folder, unable to look at those numbers anymore. And what do you get out of this? What's your angle? Adrian's smile was almost appreciative. Direct. I like that. What I get is leverage. The Volkov organization may be gone, but the networks Elena built still exist in various forms. If you align with me, if you choose to claim your inheritance publicly, it sends a message to everyone in this world that I'm powerful enough to protect Elena's heir, that I honor old debts, that I'm not someone to be crossed. So I'm a symbol. You're a person who happens to have symbolic value, yes, but that value can protect you if it's used correctly. Before Evelyn could respond, there was a knock at the door. One of Adrian's men entered, his expression tense. Sir, we have a situation. The Kozlov family has made contact. They want a meeting. Adrian's jaw tightened. When? Tomorrow, noon. They're requesting neutral ground. Tell them I'll consider it and get back to them within the hour. The man nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Adrian turned back to Evelyn. That's faster than I expected. Who are the Kozlovs? A family that absorbed most of the Volkov operations after the 1983 purge. They've been the dominant Russian organization in the Northeast for 40 years, and they just found out Elena's granddaughter is alive and under my protection. Fear spiked through Evelyn's chest. Are they dangerous? Everyone in this world is dangerous, but the Kozlovs are pragmatic. They'll want to know what you intend to do, whether you plan to make any claims on old territory or operations. If we handle this correctly, we can turn them from a threat into an asset. We? You're not doing this alone, Evelyn. That's what protection means. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window, looking out at the dark gardens. Her reflection stared back at her, a waitress in a stained uniform, completely out of place in this world of money and power and casual violence. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. I don't know how to be whatever it is you need me to be. Adrian's reflection appeared behind hers in the glass. You learn. Your grandmother did. She came to this country with nothing and became one of the most formidable people in the entire network. That intelligence, that strength, it's in your blood. What if it's not? What if I'm just me, just Evelyn, just someone who's good at balancing plates and remembering orders? Then you'd have broken down hours ago. You'd have demanded I take you home or called the police or any number of rational responses to an irrational situation. But you didn't. You got in the car. You asked the right questions. You're still standing here, still processing, still surviving. That's not ordinary. Evelyn turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. This close, she could see details she'd missed before. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he'd smiled more in his past than his current severity suggested, the way he held himself with absolute control even in casual moments. Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil? She asked softly. Because you're smart enough to know that safety comes with a price. The question is whether you're willing to pay it. Evelyn thought of her mother, dying slowly in that hospital bed, thought of the bills that kept coming, the treatments they couldn't afford, the quiet desperation of watching someone you love slip away while you're powerless to stop it. If I do this, she said slowly, if I stay and learn and become whatever this is, my mother gets everything she needs. The best doctors, the best facility, the best chance at survival. That's non-negotiable. Already arranged. My people moved her to Mercy Heights an hour ago. Private room, dedicated nursing staff, Dr. Sarah Chen heading her treatment team, one of the best oncologists in the country. Evelyn's breath caught. You moved her? Without asking me? I moved her to save time. Would you have said no? That's not the point. She's my mother, my responsibility, and now she's taken care of. Completely. You don't have to worry about her medical care ever again. You can focus on staying alive and figuring out what you want to do with your life. The presumption of it should have made her furious. Instead, she felt something break loose inside her chest. A knot of tension she'd been carrying for so long, she'd forgotten it was there. I don't even know how to thank you for that, she whispered. Don't thank me. It's part of the debt I owed your grandmother. And besides, his expression softened slightly. I understand what it's like to watch someone you love suffer while you're helpless. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. For a moment, the powerful crime lord disappeared and she saw something else. Someone who'd lost people, who'd grieved, who understood pain. "Who did you lose?" she asked before she could stop herself. Adrian's expression shuddered immediately. "That's a conversation for another time. Right now we need to focus on keeping you alive." The door opened again, and a woman entered this time. Tall, elegant, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob, and eyes that missed nothing. She was probably in her 60s, but moved with the grace of someone much younger. "Adrian, forgive the interruption, but we have movement. 3 cars just passed the north checkpoint. They're maintaining distance, but definitely surveillance." "Which family?" "Unknown. The vehicles are clean. No plates we recognize, and no obvious affiliation." Adrian cursed softly. "How much time before they reach the perimeter?" 20 minutes if they maintain current speed." He turned to Evelyn. "We need to move you to the secure wing, now." "Wait, what's happening? Are we under attack?" "Not yet, but someone's testing our security, seeing how we respond. It's a message. They know you're here, and they want us to know they know." The woman stepped forward, offering her hand to Evelyn. "I'm Catherine. I manage security for Mr. Vale. If you'll come with me, I'll take you somewhere safe." Evelyn looked between Catherine and Adrian, her heart racing. "I thought you said this place was secure." "It is. But secure doesn't mean invisible. The moment we brought you here, we announced your location to anyone paying attention. Now we see who's bold enough to make a move." "You used me as bait?" "I used you as a statement. There's a difference. Come on. We need to move." Adrian placed his hand on her back again, that same gesture from earlier, protective and controlling in equal measure. Together, they followed Catherine out of the study, through different corridors than before, deeper into the house. They descended a staircase Evelyn hadn't noticed before, hidden behind what looked like a regular wall panel. The stairs led down into what could only be described as a bunker, reinforced walls, multiple doors with complex lock systems, and security monitors showing every angle of the estate. "This is where you'll stay when there's active threat," Catherine explained, her voice calm and professional. "It's equipped with everything you need: bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette. Communications are monitored but functional. You can reach Adrian or myself through the intercom system." "How long will I be down here?" "Until we determine the threat level," Adrian said. "Could be an hour, could be longer." Evelyn looked at the space, comfortable enough, but unmistakably a cage. "This is my life now? Hiding in bunkers while men with guns decide my fate?" "For now. Until we establish your position, make the right alliances, show enough strength that approaching you becomes more trouble than it's worth." "And how long does that take?" Adrian's expression was grim. "I'll be honest with you. Weeks at minimum, possibly months. This is a game of chess, Evelyn, and you're a new piece on the board. Everyone needs to figure out what you're worth and whether you're a threat." Another man appeared at the top of the stairs. "Sir, they've stopped at the perimeter, just sitting there. No communication attempts." "How many?" 3 visible. Thermal suggests at least 2 more we can't see." Adrian nodded, then turned back to Evelyn. "I need to handle this. Stay here with Catherine. Don't leave this area for any reason." "What are you going to do?" "Have a conversation. Find out who they are and what they want." "And if they want me?" "Then they'll have to go through me first." The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it reminded Evelyn of exactly how much danger she was in. Danger that required a man like Adrian Vale to stand between her and the world. He started to leave, then stopped, turning back to her. "Evelyn, your grandmother survived 40 years by knowing when to hide and when to show strength. Right now, hiding is the smart move. But the day will come when you'll need to stand in the open and make them understand you're not prey. When that day comes, I'll be right beside you." Then he was gone, taking the stairs 2 at a time, leaving Evelyn alone with Catherine and the harsh reality of her new existence. Catherine moved to the monitors, her attention focused on the screens. "You should get some rest. These situations can take hours to resolve." "I don't think I can sleep." "Then at least sit down. You look exhausted." Evelyn collapsed into one of the chairs, suddenly aware of how tired she was. The adrenaline that had been sustaining her was fading, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. Can I ask you something? She said to Catherine. Of course. How long have you worked for Adrian? 23 years. I started as his driver, worked my way up to head of security. And in all that time, have you ever seen him honor a debt like this? Go to these lengths for someone he doesn't really know? Catherine was quiet for a moment, her eyes still on the monitors. Mister, Vale doesn't do anything without reason, but I've learned that his reasons aren't always what they appear to be on the surface. What does that mean? It means that yes, he owed your grandmother a debt, but I think this is about more than obligation. I think he sees something in you, potential maybe, or echoes of the woman who saved him. Either way, when Adrian commits to protecting someone, he doesn't do it halfway. On one of the monitors, Evelyn could see Adrian walking out the front entrance, alone, his hands visible and empty. He stood in the driveway, utterly exposed, while car headlights illuminated him from 3 different angles. Is he insane? Evelyn breathed. He's making himself a target. He's making a statement, showing them he's not afraid, that he's willing to meet them face to face. In this world, perception is everything. They watched as figures emerged from the cars. 4 men, all armed, all moving with military precision. They approached Adrian in a semicircle, close enough to talk but far enough to maintain tactical advantage. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. Evelyn couldn't hear what was being said, but she could read body language, tension in every frame, hands never straying far from weapons. The kind of careful choreography that one wrong move could shatter into violence. Finally, Adrian nodded once. The men returned to their cars. The vehicles turned around and left the way they'd come. Catherine let out a breath she'd been holding. Well, that's interesting. What is? They left, which means they're not here for immediate confrontation. They were just sending a message. 5 minutes later, Adrian appeared at the bottom of the stairs. His expression was unreadable, but there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. The Kozlovs, he said without preamble. They've moved up the timeline. They want the meeting tomorrow morning instead of noon. What does that mean? Evelyn asked. It means they're more worried about you than I thought. They want to assess you quickly, figure out what threat you pose. I don't pose any threat. I don't want anything from them. You exist. In their world, that's threat enough. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. They're also making demands. They want you at the meeting. Absolutely not, Catherine said immediately. It's too dangerous. She's not ready for that kind of exposure. I agree, but we may not have a choice. If we refuse, it sends a message of weakness, like we're afraid to let them see her. Because we should be afraid, Catherine argued. She's untrained, unprepared, and one mistake in that room could get her killed. Then we don't make mistakes. Adrian turned to Evelyn. It's your call. I can refuse them, which will buy us time but create other problems. Or you can attend, and we control the narrative from the beginning. Evelyn thought about her grandmother, about the woman in that photograph from 1981, standing next to Mikhail Volkov like she belonged there, like she owned the room. If I go, she said slowly, what would I need to do? Listen more than you speak. Let me handle the actual negotiation. You're there as a symbol, nothing more. They need to see you, to verify you exist, to read your intentions. And what are my intentions? That's what we'll decide between now and tomorrow morning. Evelyn looked at the monitors, at the empty driveway where minutes ago armed men had stood in judgment of her worth. She thought about her mother in that private room with the best doctors money could buy. She thought about the perfume bottle that had changed everything. Okay, she said, I'll do it. I'll go to the meeting. Catherine made a sound of protest, but Adrian silenced her with a look. Then we have work to do, he said. Catherine, I need complete backgrounds on everyone in the Kozlov organization who might attend. Evelyn, you and I need to talk strategy. This meeting will set the tone for everything that comes after. What time is it now? Evelyn asked. Just past 2 a.m. She laughed, slightly hysterical. 12 hours ago, I was worrying about whether I'd make enough in tips to pay the electric bill. Now I'm preparing for a meeting with the Russian mob. Not mob, Adrian corrected gently. That's a crude term. Think of them more as a multinational corporation with alternative business practices. That's a very generous description of organized crime. Perspective matters. To them, they're entrepreneurs operating in markets the government has unfairly restricted. To law enforcement, they're criminals. The truth is probably somewhere in between. And what are you? Evelyn asked. In that spectrum between entrepreneur and criminal? Adrian's smile was sharp and knowing. I'm whatever I need to be to survive, just like your grandmother was, just like you're going to be. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, somewhere deep inside, Evelyn felt something stir. Not quite acceptance, but recognition. Maybe this was in her blood, after all. Maybe Elena Petrov's granddaughter had more in common with her than she'd ever wanted to admit. Maybe the person she'd been this morning, the struggling waitress, the dutiful daughter, the woman slowly drowning in circumstances beyond her control, maybe that person had only been one version of who she could be. Teach me, she said to Adrian, everything I need to know to survive tomorrow. We have 7 hours until dawn. Let's use them. Adrian's expression shifted into something like pride. All right, let's begin with the most important lesson. In the world you're about to enter, there are only two kinds of people, predators and prey. Your grandmother understood that. She chose to be neither. What was she then? Something far more dangerous. She was someone predators respected too much to hunt, and someone prey trusted to protect them. She created her own category, and that's why she survived when everyone else from that era is dead or in prison. And that's what you want me to become? That's what you need to become if you want to live long enough to decide what kind of person you really want to be. The next 7 hours passed in a blur of information that Evelyn's exhausted brain struggled to absorb. Adrian moved her from the bunker to a conference room on the second floor, where Catherine had set up a presentation that looked like something from a corporate briefing, except the subject matter was criminal organizations instead of quarterly earnings. The Kozlov family, Adrian began, pulling up a photograph of a severe-looking man in his 60s, is currently headed by Dmitry Kozlov. He took control in 1985, 2 years after the Volkov purge. He's ruthless, intelligent, and has managed to keep his organization profitable through 4 decades of changing political landscapes and law enforcement crackdowns. Evelyn stared at Dmitry's photograph, trying to reconcile the distinguished-looking man with the violence Adrian had described earlier. He looked like someone's grandfather, not a crime lord. Don't let the appearance fool you, Adrian said, reading her expression. Dmitry has personally ordered at least 40 executions that we know of, probably twice that number we don't. He survived this long by being absolutely merciless with threats and absolutely loyal to allies. Which am I, threat or ally? That's what tomorrow's meeting will determine. Adrian clicked to the next slide, showing a younger man with cold eyes and a predatory smile. This is Alexei Kozlov, Dmitry's eldest son. He handles operations, enforcement, the violent side of the business. If Dmitry is the brain, Alexei is the fist. Will he be at the meeting? Almost certainly, Dmitry will want his perspective on you. Another click. This is Nadia Kozlov, Dmitry's daughter. She manages their legitimate businesses, real estate, import-export, financial services. She's the acceptable face they show the world. The woman in the photograph was beautiful in a severe way, with platinum blonde hair and eyes that could cut glass. She wore a designer suit and held herself with the kind of confidence that came from never having been told no. She looks terrifying, Evelyn said honestly. She is. Don't underestimate her because she doesn't get her hands dirty. Nadia is arguably more dangerous than Alexei because she understands how to destroy someone financially and legally, which lasts longer than physical violence. Catherine spoke up from her position by the door. Nadia also knew your grandmother. They had dealings in the early 80s, before the purge. What kind of dealings? Nadia was young then, just starting in the family business. Elena mentored her for a period, taught her how to navigate negotiations, how to read people. By all accounts, Nadia respected your grandmother greatly. That could work in our favor, Adrian said. Or against us, depending on whether Nadia sees you as worthy of that legacy. He moved to the next slide, but Evelyn held up a hand to stop him. Wait, I need a minute. This is too much information too fast. Adrian checked his watch. We don't have the luxury of taking it slow. The meeting is in 6 hours, and you need to understand who you'll be facing. I get that, but my brain is saturated. I can't absorb any more right now. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, take a break. Catherine, show her to one of the guest rooms. Let her shower, change clothes, eat something. We'll reconvene in an hour. Evelyn followed Catherine down another hallway, this one lined with closed doors that presumably led to bedrooms. Catherine opened one near the end, revealing a space that was larger and more luxurious than Evelyn's entire apartment. "There's a bathroom through there," Catherine said, pointing to a door on the left. "I'll have some clothes brought up. What size do you wear?" 6, usually, but really, anything is fine. I just need to get out of this uniform. I'll find something appropriate for the meeting as well. Conservative but confident. You want to look like you belong in that room." After Catherine left, Evelyn stood in the center of the guest room, feeling completely unmoored from reality. Less than 12 hours ago, she'd been worried about tips and electric bills. Now she was in a mansion, preparing to meet with crime lords, trying to figure out how to survive in a world she hadn't known existed. The bathroom was all marble and gold fixtures, with a shower that had more settings than Evelyn's car. She stood under water hot enough to scald, letting it wash away the diner smell, the fear sweat, the residue of her old life. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that probably cost more than her weekly salary, she found that someone had laid out clothes on the bed. Not just the conservative outfit Catherine had mentioned, but also casual clothes for now. Soft cotton pants, a simple shirt, undergarments still in their packaging. The efficiency of it was almost disturbing. How many people did Adrian have working for him that he could produce women's clothing in the correct size at 3 in the morning? She dressed in the casual clothes and was about to lie down when there was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Catherine. Instead, Adrian entered, carrying a tray with food, a sandwich, fruit, a pot of tea. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "You brought me food yourself? Don't you have people for that?" "I do, but I wanted to talk to you privately, without Catherine hovering like a protective guardian." Evelyn sat at the table, suddenly ravenous. The sandwich was turkey and Swiss on what tasted like homemade bread, and she devoured half of it before remembering her manners. "Sorry," she said around a mouthful. "I haven't eaten since my break at the diner, and that was just a granola bar." "Don't apologize. Eat." Adrian poured tea for both of them, the domestic gesture at odds with everything else about him. They sat in comfortable silence while Evelyn ate. When she finally felt human again, she leaned back in her chair and studied him. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I may not answer. Earlier, when I asked who you'd lost, you shut down, but you said you understood what it was like to watch someone suffer while you're helpless. Who was it?" Adrian's jaw tightened, and Evelyn thought he'd refuse to answer. But after a long moment, he spoke. "My sister, Katya. She was 6 years younger than me, and she had the misfortune of being born into our family. When I was 19, one of our father's enemies took her. They held her for 3 days, sending pieces of her back to us until our father agreed to their terms." Evelyn's stomach turned. "Did they let her go?" "Eventually, but she was never the same. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological damage was permanent. She lived another 8 years, mostly in hospitals and treatment facilities, before she killed herself." "Adrian, I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, but it taught me an important lesson. In this world, the people you love become weapons against you. Your mother is safe now because I've made her untouchable. But you need to understand that anyone else you care about, anyone you let close, becomes a potential target." The warning was clear, but there was something else underneath it, a loneliness that came from years of keeping everyone at arm's length. "Is that why you've never married? Never had a family?" "That's why I've never let anyone close enough to become a liability." He met her eyes. "Until now, apparently. I'm not close to you. I barely know you." "No, but you're my responsibility now, which means I'm vulnerable in ways I haven't been in years. It's an uncomfortable feeling. Then why do it? Why take on this burden for someone you don't know, for a debt owed to a woman who's been dead for months?" Adrian was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost reflective. "Because when your grandmother saved me, she didn't do it out of obligation or strategy. She did it because she saw a kid who was terrified and alone and made a stupid mistake, and she decided he deserved a second chance. No one had ever looked at me that way before, like I was worth saving just for my own sake." He turned to look out the window at the pre-dawn darkness. I spent the next 40 years building power, accumulating wealth, becoming someone who couldn't be touched or hurt. But I never forgot that moment when someone chose kindness over calculation. And now I have a chance to pay that forward, to be for you what Elena was for me. How could I not take it? The raw honesty in his words made Evelyn's chest ache. She stood and moved to stand beside him at the window. I think my grandmother would be glad that you turned into someone who remembers kindness, that you didn't let this world make you completely hard. Don't romanticize me, Evelyn. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you, made decisions that cost lives, built my empire on foundations that aren't clean. The kindness is reserved for a very small circle. But it exists. That's what matters. He looked down at her, and for a moment something passed between them. An understanding, a connection, the beginning of trust. You should rest, he said finally. We'll need to resume your briefing in a few hours, and you'll want to be sharp for the meeting. I don't know if I can sleep. My mind won't stop racing. Try anyway. And Evelyn, when we walk into that room tomorrow, I need you to remember something. You're not a waitress anymore. You're not even just Elena's granddaughter. You're a player in your own right, and you need to believe that even if you don't feel it yet. Fake it until I make it. Exactly. Perception is reality in this world. If you walk in looking confident, they'll treat you as someone worth respecting. Walk in looking scared, and they'll smell weakness. After Adrian left, Evelyn lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep seemed impossible, her mind churning through everything she'd learned, everything that was about to happen. But exhaustion eventually won, and she drifted into a fitful sleep filled with dreams of her grandmother. Not the old woman she'd known, but the young, powerful Elena from the photograph, moving through rooms filled with dangerous men with absolute confidence. In the dream, Elena turned to Evelyn and spoke, her voice clear and strong. The blood knows, child. Even if you don't remember, the blood knows. Evelyn woke to find pale morning light filtering through the curtains. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The diner, Adrian, the impossible truth about her grandmother. Someone had left a breakfast tray outside her door. Coffee, pastries, fresh fruit. She ate mechanically, then showered again, taking her time to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. Catherine appeared at 8, carrying the outfit she'd promised. It was a suit in deep charcoal gray, tailored perfectly, with a silk blouse in cream. Simple jewelry, pearl earrings, a thin gold watch. Shoes with a modest heel that added height without being ostentatious. Put these on, Catherine said. I'll help with your hair and makeup. I can do my own makeup. Not for this, you can't. You need to look polished, professional, like you belong in that room. Trust me. Evelyn submitted to Catherine's ministrations, watching in the mirror as the security chief transformed her from a tired waitress into someone who looked almost powerful. The makeup was subtle but strategic, emphasizing her eyes, giving her color without looking artificial. Catherine swept Evelyn's dark hair into a low bun, leaving a few strategic pieces to frame her face. There, Catherine said, stepping back. Look at yourself. Evelyn stood and faced the full-length mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, polished, composed, the kind of person who made decisions in boardrooms and didn't flinch. I don't recognize myself, Evelyn whispered. Good. That means you're not thinking of yourself as the person you were yesterday. You're becoming someone new. Adrian was waiting in the foyer when Evelyn came downstairs. He changed into a different suit, this one even more expensive looking than the last, if that was possible. When he saw her, something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or surprise. You clean up well, he said simply. Catherine did all the work. Catherine provided the tools. You're carrying it off. He checked his watch. We need to leave in 10 minutes. I want to arrive exactly on time, not early, which suggests eagerness, and not late, which suggests disrespect. Where's this meeting? Neutral ground, a private room at the Belmont Hotel downtown. It's owned by neither family, which means both of us can operate with relative security. Relative security? Nothing is ever completely safe, but this is as close as we'll get. They rode to the hotel in one of the black SUVs, flanked by two others carrying Adrian's security team. The drive into downtown Miami felt surreal. The morning commuters rushing to normal jobs, people grabbing coffee at Starbucks. the ordinary world continuing while Evelyn's had completely transformed. The Belmont was old Miami elegance, all Art Deco glamour and understated wealth. They entered through a private entrance, avoiding the main lobby entirely. Adrian's hand was at her back again, that familiar gesture that was becoming both comforting and confining. An elevator took them to a private floor. When the doors opened, Evelyn saw two men waiting in the hallway, clearly security, clearly armed. "Mr. Vale," one of them said with a nod. "They're ready for you. The Kozlovs arrived 5 minutes ago." "Perfect timing, then," Adrian said smoothly. He led Evelyn to a set of double doors. Before opening them, he turned to her. "Remember what we discussed. Let me do the talking. You're there to be seen, not heard. Answer if directly addressed, but keep responses brief. And above all, don't show fear. They can smell it like sharks smell blood." "No pressure, then," Evelyn said, trying for humor despite the terror clawing at her throat. Adrian's expression softened fractionally. "You're Elena's granddaughter. This is in your blood whether you know it or not. Trust that." Then he opened the doors, and Evelyn stepped into the room. It was set up like a formal meeting space. A long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Miami skyline. And seated on the far side were three people she recognized from the previous night's briefing. Dmitry Kozlov sat in the center, every bit as severe in person as in his photograph. To his right was Alexei, lounging in his chair with deceptive casualness. And to Dmitry's left was Nadia, her platinum hair gleaming in the morning light, her expression unreadable. "Adrian," Dmitry said, his accent thick but his English perfect. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice." "Dmitry, it's been too long." Adrian moved to the table, pulling out a chair for Evelyn before taking his own seat. "I believe you know why we're here." "Indeed." Dmitry's gaze shifted to Evelyn, assessing her with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime evaluating threats. "Elena Petrov's granddaughter. We thought the bloodline had ended." "My mother is still alive," Evelyn said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "And I'm very much here." Nadia leaned forward, her sharp eyes cataloging every detail of Evelyn's appearance. "You look like her." "Not exactly, but the resemblance is there. Same cheekbones, same way of holding yourself." I didn't know her well enough to know if that's a compliment or an insult. A slight smile curved Nadia's lips. "It's a statement of fact. Your grandmother was one of the most formidable women I've ever met. Whether you live up to that legacy remains to be seen." "My granddaughter's legacy is her own business," Adrian said coolly. "Not yours." "Granddaughter?" Alexei spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a mocking edge. "That's an interesting claim, Adrian. Since when do you have family?" "Since I chose to protect Elena's heir. The relationship is symbolic, but the commitment is absolute." Dmitry raised a hand, silencing Alexei before he could respond. "Let's dispense with the posturing. We're here to establish facts. Evelyn Carter, are you aware of your grandmother's history with our organization?" "I am now. Adrian explained it to me." "And do you intend to make any claims on assets or territories that were associated with the Volkov organization?" Evelyn felt all eyes on her. This was the moment Adrian had prepared her for, the question that would determine whether she was a threat or could be managed. "I have no interest in your operations," she said clearly. "I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. I'm a waitress trying to take care of my sick mother. I don't want power or territory or anything else from that world." "Then why wear the perfume?" Nadia asked sharply. "Why activate a signal that's been dormant for 4 decades?" "Because I didn't know what it meant. It was just something my grandmother left me, and I put it on without thinking. If I'd known it would cause all this, I never would have touched it." Dmitry studied her in silence for a long moment. "You seem genuine, but genuine doesn't always mean truthful. How do we know you're not playing a longer game? Claiming ignorance now while you learn the landscape, then making moves later when you're better positioned?" "You don't," Adrian said before Evelyn could respond. "You take it on faith, or you take it on my word. I'm vouching for her intentions. That should be enough." "Your word carries weight, Adrian," Dmitry acknowledged. "But this is a unique situation. The Volkov legacy has been settled for 40 years. The appearance of an heir creates instability, raises questions about old agreements and old debts." "What debts?" Evelyn asked. "What could my grandmother have possibly left unfinished?" Nadia and Dmitri exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them before Dmitri spoke again. When Elena left, she took knowledge with her. Information about operations, about people, about transactions that certain parties would prefer to remain buried. We've always operated under the assumption that knowledge died with her. Now you appear and we have to wonder, did she pass that information to you? She passed me a bottle of perfume and some recipes for Russian pastries. That's it. She never talked about her past, never hinted at any of this. Perhaps she didn't have time, Nadia said thoughtfully. She died unexpectedly, didn't she? Cancer? Pancreatic cancer. She had 6 months from diagnosis to death. Then it's possible she intended to tell you eventually, but ran out of time, which means the information might still exist somewhere, written down, recorded, hidden for you to find. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Are you saying you think my grandmother left some kind of evidence? Something that could implicate people? I'm saying we need to be certain, Dmitri said. And the only way to be certain is to conduct a thorough search of anything Elena might have left behind. Absolutely not, Adrian said flatly. You're not going through Evelyn's personal effects looking for ghosts. Then how do we resolve this concern? Alexei asked, his voice hard. We're supposed to just take her word that nothing exists. That's not how this works. The tension in the room ratcheted up several degrees. Evelyn could feel the careful balance tipping towards something dangerous. What if I agreed to let someone search? She asked quietly. Adrian's head whipped toward her. Evelyn, no. What if I let someone I trust search my grandmother's belongings, verify that there's nothing there, and report back? Would that satisfy your concerns? Dmitri considered this. Someone you trust, meaning someone from Adrian's organization? Meaning someone neutral, someone we both agree on. Evelyn was making this up as she went, trying to navigate waters she didn't understand, but the logic seemed sound. An interesting proposal, Nadia said. But who could we possibly both trust in a situation like this? What about a lawyer? Evelyn suggested. Someone bound by attorney-client privilege, someone with no loyalty to either organization. They could review my grandmother's effects, certify that there's nothing of concern, and neither of you would have to trust each other. There was silence as the Kozlovs considered this. Finally, Dmitri nodded slowly. That could work. We'd need to approve the choice of attorney, of course, and they'd need to be someone with experience in delicate matters. I know someone, Adrian said reluctantly. Marcus Chen. He's handled sensitive situations for multiple organizations over the years. He's discreet, thorough, and has no direct ties to either of our families. Chen? Dmitri repeated. Yes, I know of him. He represented the Marchetti family during their restructuring 5 years ago. He's acceptable. The tension eased slightly. Evelyn felt like she'd just navigated a minefield blindfolded, but somehow she was still standing. Is there anything else? Adrian asked, his tone making it clear he wanted this meeting over. One more thing, Nadia said, looking directly at Evelyn. Your mother. She's at Mercy Heights now, I understand, under Adrian's protection. Evelyn's protective instincts flared immediately. My mother has nothing to do with any of this. She's dying, and she deserves to do it in peace. I'm not threatening her, Nadia said, her voice surprisingly gentle. I'm offering assurance. My organization will also extend protection to your mother. Double coverage means double security. It's a gesture of good faith. Why would you do that? Because your grandmother helped me when I was young and stupid and about to make catastrophic mistakes. She taught me how to think strategically, how to see 3 moves ahead. I owed her a debt I never got to repay. Consider this a down payment on that debt. Something shifted in the room, the hostility transforming into something more complex. Not quite alliance, but not outright opposition either. Dmitri stood, signaling the meeting's end. We'll proceed with the attorney review. Once Chen certifies that there are no outstanding concerns, we'll consider this matter settled. Evelyn Carter will be recognized as Elena Petrov's heir, with all the protections that entails, and in exchange, she makes no claims on Volkov assets or operations. Agreed, Adrian said, standing as well. Dmitri approached Evelyn, extending his hand. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. I hope you prove to be worthy of her legacy, one way or another. Evelyn shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip, the assessment in his eyes. I hope so too. As the Kozlovs left, Adrian's entire body seemed to relax fractionally. When they were finally alone in the room, he turned to Evelyn. That was incredibly risky, offering to let them search your grandmother's things. I know, but they were going to demand it anyway, weren't they? At least this way we controlled the terms. You're learning fast, maybe too fast. What do you mean? I mean you just negotiated with one of the most dangerous families in the country and came out ahead. That's either natural talent or dangerous instinct, and I'm not sure which worries me more. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Sir, we should leave. The longer we stay, the more vulnerable we are. The ride back to Adrian's estate was quiet. Evelyn stared out the window, her mind processing everything that had just happened. She'd sat across from people who'd killed for less than respect and somehow convinced them she wasn't a threat. Maybe her grandmother's blood really did remember, even if Evelyn's conscious mind had no idea what it was doing. Back at the estate, Adrian led her to his study again. This time, he poured them both drinks, whiskey, neat. I don't usually drink before noon, Evelyn said. Today qualifies as an exception. He handed her the glass, then raised his own in a toast. To surviving your first negotiation. It won't be my last, will it? No, this was just the first test. There will be others. Evelyn sipped the whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat. Nadia said something that stuck with me. She said whether I'm worthy of my grandmother's legacy remains to be seen. What did she mean by that? She meant that carrying Elena's name is one thing, living up to what it represents is another. Your grandmother wasn't just powerful, she was ethical in her own way, honorable. She kept her word, protected people who couldn't protect themselves, and never broke a treaty. That's rare in our world. And Nadia wants to see if I'll do the same? Nadia wants to see if you're someone she can work with in the future, or if you're just a problem that needs to be managed. Evelyn set down her glass. I need to call my mother. I haven't talked to her since yesterday, and she'll be worried. Use my phone, yours is still compromised. She dialed the number for Mercy Heights, asking for her mother's room. When the nurse answered, Evelyn could hear the quality difference immediately. Efficiency, professionalism, the sound of real care. Can I speak to her? She's sleeping right now, dear. We've adjusted her pain medication and she's resting comfortably. Would you like me to have her call you when she wakes? Yes, please. Tell her everything's going to be okay now. After she hung up, Evelyn felt tears threatening for the first time since this all began. I don't know how to do this. How to be two people at once. The daughter who just wants her mother to get better, and whoever I'm becoming in your world. Adrian moved to sit beside her on the sofa. You don't have to be two people. You just have to be yourself, adapted to new circumstances. That's not an answer. That's a platitude. Then here's the truth. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to doubt yourself, second-guess decisions, wonder if you're doing the right thing. But as long as you remember why you're doing this, for your mother, for your survival, for whatever future you want to build, you'll find your way through. And what if I don't want this future? What if I just want my old life back? Adrian's expression was genuinely sympathetic. Then you should have never put on that perfume. Because there's no going back now, Evelyn. That door is closed. The only direction left is forward. The certainty in his voice was both terrifying and oddly comforting. At least someone knew what they were doing, even if Evelyn didn't. Her phone, Adrian's phone, technically, buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, then showed her the screen. It was from Nadia Kozlov. Your grandmother would be proud of how you handled yourself today. When you're ready to learn what she really knew, call me. Some debts can only be paid in knowledge shared. Evelyn read the message twice, trying to parse its meaning. Is she saying my grandmother did leave information behind? She's saying that Nadia has information about your grandmother that she's willing to share. Whether it's valuable or just nostalgia, I can't say. Should I respond? Not yet. Let her wait. In this world, eagerness is weakness. But Evelyn's mind was already racing with possibilities. What had her grandmother really been? What had she known? And more importantly, what had she wanted Evelyn to know, but run out of time to tell her? The bottle of perfume had opened a door. The question now was whether Evelyn had the courage to walk through it completely, or if she'd spend the rest of her life standing on the threshold, trapped between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Outside, the Miami sun climbed higher in the sky, burning away the morning coolness. In hospitals and offices and ordinary lives, people went about their business, unaware that in rooms like this, decisions were being made that would ripple through the city's hidden infrastructure. And somewhere in a private facility, Evelyn's mother slept peacefully, her cancer still eating her alive, but her immediate needs finally met, unaware that her daughter had just stepped irrevocably into a legacy written in blood and secrets 4 decades before she was born. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm that Evelyn could never have anticipated. Her days became divided between 2 worlds that should have been incompatible but somehow coexisted, visiting her mother at Mercy Heights during the afternoons, and spending her evenings and mornings being educated in the intricacies of Adrian's world. Marcus Chen, the attorney both families had agreed upon, arrived on the 3rd day. He was a compact man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of calm demeanor that suggested nothing could rattle him. He spent 2 days going through the meager possessions Elena had left behind: clothing, photographs, books, the few pieces of furniture from her apartment that hadn't been sold to pay bills. Nothing, he reported to both Adrian and representatives from the Kozlov family in a conference call. No hidden documents, no safe deposit keys, no coded messages. If Elena Petrov left behind secrets, they're not in any physical form I can find. The Kozlovs accepted this finding, and the tension that had been hovering over Evelyn like a storm cloud finally dissipated. She was officially recognized as Elena's heir, which meant something in the hidden world Adrian inhabited, even if Evelyn still didn't fully understand what. What she did understand was that her mother was getting better, not cured. Pancreatic cancer didn't allow for miracles, but the pain was managed, the symptoms were controlled, and Dr. Chen had enrolled her in an experimental treatment trial that was showing promising results. The tumors have stabilized, the doctor told Evelyn during one of their weekly consultations. We're not seeing the aggressive growth we'd expect at this stage. If this continues, we might be looking at months instead of weeks, possibly longer. Miss Evelyn had cried in the hospital bathroom after that meeting, overwhelmed by relief and guilt in equal measure. Her mother was alive because Evelyn had made a deal with the devil. The question was whether the price would eventually become too high. Her mother, for her part, accepted the sudden change in circumstances with surprising grace. A private benefactor, Evelyn had explained, hating the lie but unable to tell the truth. Someone who knew Grandma Elena back in the day. They wanted to help. Her mother had studied her with those knowing eyes that saw too much. You're different, sweetheart. Something's changed. I got a new job, better pay, better hours. I can actually take care of you properly now. That's not what I mean. You hold yourself differently. You look people in the eye more. You seem stronger, somehow. Evelyn had deflected, changed the subject, but the observation haunted her. She was different. Every day spent in Adrian's world was transforming her in subtle ways she was only beginning to recognize. The education Adrian provided was unlike anything Evelyn had experienced. There were no textbooks or formal lessons, just constant exposure to how his world operated. She sat in on meetings with his legitimate business managers, learning how money was moved and cleaned through layers of corporate structures. She observed negotiations between Adrian and other organizations, seeing how power was balanced and traded. She learned to read people the way her grandmother apparently had, watching for tells, understanding motivations, recognizing when someone was lying. You have a natural instinct for this, Catherine observed one evening, after Evelyn had correctly predicted how a tense negotiation would resolve. It's almost unsettling. Maybe it's genetic, Evelyn said, only half joking. Maybe. Or maybe you've just spent your whole life reading people in a different context. Waiting tables requires understanding what customers want before they ask, managing difficult personalities, staying calm under pressure. Those skills translate. But it was more than that, and Evelyn knew it. There was something deeper happening, some part of herself awakening that had been dormant. She caught herself thinking strategically, seeing angles and opportunities she never would have noticed before. It should have frightened her. Instead, it felt almost natural. Adrian noticed the change too. Their relationship had evolved from strictly professional into something more complex. He still maintained careful distance, still kept his private life completely separate, But there were moments of genuine connection that surprised them both. Like the night she found him in his study at 2 in the morning, staring at financial reports with an expression of exhaustion she'd never seen on his face. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. "I could ask you the same thing." "I was getting water, saw your light on." She moved into the room, noticing the bottle of whiskey on his desk, half empty. "What's wrong?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "Adrian, I live in your house, eat your food, and apparently my entire future is tied to your decisions. I think I've earned the right to know when something's bothering you." He studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the chair across from him. "One of our shipping operations got intercepted by the Coast Guard. Nothing illegal was found, but the inspection itself is problematic. It suggests someone tipped them off, which means we have a leak." "How bad is that?" "Bad enough. Trust is currency in my world, and if my own people can't be trusted, everything becomes unstable." Evelyn thought about this, applying the lessons she'd been learning. So you need to find the leak without alerting them that you know, and you need to do it in a way that sends a message to anyone else who might be thinking about betrayal. Exactly. The problem is narrowing down the suspects. 40 people had access to that shipping schedule. Then don't narrow it down, expand it. Adrian's eyebrows rose. "Explain." "Give different information to different groups. See which version gets leaked. It's basic compartmentalization. My grandmother apparently used it all the time, according to what you've told me." A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. "That's actually brilliant. Simple, but effective." "I have my moments." They'd work through the strategy together until dawn, and when the leak was eventually identified, a junior logistics coordinator being paid by a rival organization, Adrian had acknowledged Evelyn's contribution publicly in front of his senior people. The respect in their eyes had been both gratifying and terrifying. But not everyone in Adrian's organization was pleased with Evelyn's growing influence. She'd felt the resentment from some of his lieutenants, the way they watched her with suspicion or barely concealed hostility. She was an outsider, unproven, and yet Adrian was giving her access and trust they'd spent years earning. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after the Kozlov meeting. Evelyn was in the estate's library, reading through files Adrian had given her on various allied and rival organizations when Marcus Reeves walked in. Marcus was Adrian's head of operations, a man in his early 40s with military bearing and cold eyes. He'd been with Adrian for 15 years and clearly resented Evelyn's presence. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. Evelyn looked up from her reading. "About what?" "About you playing house here while the rest of us do the actual work. About Adrian being distracted by some waitress who thinks she's special because her grandmother used to be important." Evelyn closed the file calmly, using the moment to control her rising anger. "Is there a specific concern, or are you just venting general hostility?" "My concern is that Adrian is making decisions based on sentiment instead of strategy. He's exposing us to risk because he feels guilty about some old debt. And you're taking advantage of that." "I never asked for any of this." "No, you just accepted it all without question. The protection, the money, the influence. You think it comes free? Everything has a cost in this world, and eventually Adrian's going to wake up and realize you're not worth what he's paying." Evelyn stood, moving to face Marcus directly. Something in her had shifted during these weeks, some core of steel that her grandmother must have possessed. She wasn't the frightened waitress anymore. Wasn't someone who could be intimidated by posturing and threats. "You're right about one thing," she said quietly. "Everything has a cost, but you're wrong about what I'm worth. Adrian made a strategic decision to protect me, and it's already paid dividends. The Kozlov family could have been a major problem, but now they're neutral at worst, potential allies at best. That happened because I was willing to negotiate instead of hide. One meeting doesn't make you valuable. Then let me prove it. Give me a problem, something you're stuck on. Let me show you that I'm more than just Adrian's charity case." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "All right. We have a supplier in New York who's been inconsistent with deliveries. Sometimes the shipments are perfect. Sometimes they're short or late. We can't figure out if it's incompetence, theft, or deliberate sabotage. Adrian's been too busy to focus on it, but it's costing us money and reliability." "What kind of supplier?" "Electronics, components for various businesses." Evelyn thought for a moment. Have the inconsistencies followed any pattern? Specific days, specific products? We haven't analyzed it that way. Then do that first. Create a spreadsheet with every shipment for the last 6 months. Date, contents, expected versus actual delivery, any anomalies. Patterns reveal motivation. And if there's no pattern, then it's probably incompetence, which is easier to fix than malice. But I'm betting there's a pattern, and once you see it, you'll understand what's really happening. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, reassessing. I'll pull the data, but if you're wrong, if this turns out to be a waste of time, then you can tell Adrian I'm useless and should be sent away. Fair? He nodded curtly and left. Evelyn sat back down, her hands shaking slightly. She'd just gambled on instinct, on patterns she'd learned from watching Adrian work, on intelligence that might or might not be in her blood. 2 days later, Marcus returned to the library where Evelyn had taken to spending most of her time. His expression was unreadable as he handed her a tablet showing a spreadsheet. You were right. There's a pattern. Shipments are short or late every other Thursday, and only on orders that contain high-value components. Evelyn studied the data. Thursday. What's special about Thursday? Nothing that I can see. It's midweek, normal business day. Who handles receiving on Thursdays? Different people, depending on the shift. But there must be some constant. Someone who's always there on Thursdays, even if they're not directly handling receiving. Marcus pulled up another file. The warehouse manager, Richard Chen. He works Tuesday through Saturday every week. And is he related to any of the people in your organization? No, he's been with the supplier for 8 years, clean background, no flags. 8 years, Evelyn repeated thoughtfully. So he was there before Adrian started working with this supplier. What if Chen isn't loyal to the supplier? What if he's loyal to whoever was using them before Adrian? Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. He's been skimming for his old employer, waiting for Thursday when he knows the right people will be on shift to help him. That's my theory, but you'd need to verify it before taking action. Marcus sat down across from her, his hostility replaced by something like grudging respect. How did you know to look at the personnel instead of the process? Because processes don't have patterns unless people create them. And people create patterns when they're trying to hide something regular in something irregular. It's human nature. Your grandmother taught you that? My grandmother never taught me anything about this world, but she did teach me to pay attention to what people do, not what they say. I'm just applying that in a different context. Over the next week, Marcus's investigation confirmed Evelyn's theory. Richard Chen had indeed been stealing high-value components every other Thursday, selling them to his former employer who was undercutting Adrian's prices in certain markets. The resolution was swift, and Evelyn suspected violent, though Adrian kept those details from her. What mattered was that Marcus's attitude toward her changed completely. He began including her in operational discussions, asking her opinion on problems, treating her like a legitimate member of Adrian's inner circle. You've won him over, Catherine observed one evening. That's no small feat. Marcus doesn't trust easily. I just solved a problem, that's all. You proved you think like one of us. That's what he needed to see. The words should have troubled Evelyn more than they did. Thinking like one of them meant thinking like a criminal, like someone who existed outside normal society's rules. But she couldn't deny the satisfaction she'd felt when her theory proved correct, when she demonstrated value beyond just being Elena's granddaughter. It was during this time that Nadia Kozlov reached out again. This time, it wasn't a cryptic text message, but a formal invitation to lunch at an upscale restaurant in Coral Gables. Adrian was immediately suspicious. She's testing you, trying to create a relationship independent of me. Is that bad? It could be. The Kozlovs could be trying to turn you, to make you more loyal to them than to me. Or they could be genuinely interested in honoring their connection to your grandmother. Either way, refusing would be insulting, wouldn't it? Yes. Which is why you're going to accept, and why Catherine is going to be at the next table over, watching everything. The restaurant was the kind of place Evelyn had walked past 1,000 times, but never dreamed of entering. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, prices that required 3 figures for an appetizer. Nadia was already seated when Evelyn arrived, looking effortlessly elegant in a cream-colored suit. Evelyn, thank you for coming. Nadia stood to greet her, European-style kisses on both cheeks. Please, sit. I've already ordered wine. I hope you don't mind. That's fine. Evelyn took her seat, hyper-aware of Catherine at a corner table, pretending to read a menu. You've caused quite a stir in our little world, Nadia said, once they'd been served wine and left alone. Elena's heir under Adrian Vale's protection. People are very interested in what that means. It means I'm trying to survive something I never asked to be part of. Are you? Just surviving? Nadia's sharp eyes studied her. From what I hear, you've been doing considerably more than that. Solving problems, making strategic suggestions, earning respect from people who don't give it easily. Who told you that? I have sources everywhere, dear. It's how I stay alive. The question is whether you understand what you're becoming. And what am I becoming? Nadia leaned forward, her voice dropping. Someone with power. Real power, not just the symbolic kind that comes from your bloodline. You're learning to think like your grandmother did, to see patterns and opportunities, to understand leverage. The question is whether you're going to use that power wisely. I don't want power. I just want my mother to get better and to figure out how to live a normal life again. There's no normal life for you anymore. Surely you've realized that by now? Nadia sipped her wine. But that doesn't have to be a tragedy. Your grandmother didn't see it as one. She saw it as an opportunity to shape the world around her, to protect people who needed protection, to build something lasting. She walked away from all of it. She walked away from the violence and the constant danger, yes, but she never stopped being who she was. I know. I stayed in touch with her over the years, carefully, quietly. She helped people from the shadows, used her knowledge to prevent conflicts, to save lives. She just did it without the spotlight. Evelyn's breath caught. You knew her after she left? All those years? Not constantly, but periodically. She'd send me letters, encrypted messages through channels no one else knew about. When I had a problem I couldn't solve, sometimes I'd receive advice from an anonymous source. It was always her. Why are you telling me this? Because she asked me to. In her last letter to me, she said if anything happened to her, if you ever appeared in our world, I should tell you the truth. That she didn't abandon what she was, she just transformed it into something sustainable. Nadia reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, aged and worn. This is for you. She gave it to me 5 years ago, said to keep it until either you appeared or she'd been dead long enough that it wouldn't matter anymore. Evelyn took the envelope with trembling hands. Her grandmother's handwriting was on the front, elegant and precise. For Evelyn, when she's ready to understand. What's in it? I don't know. She sealed it in front of me and made me promise not to look. Whatever it is, she wanted you to have it when you were ready. Evelyn stared at the envelope, almost afraid to open it. Why wait 5 years to give this to me? Why not send it after she died? Because you weren't ready then. You were just a grieving granddaughter. Now you're someone who's learned enough to understand what she has to say. The lunch continued, but Evelyn barely tasted her food. The envelope sat next to her plate like a bomb waiting to detonate. When they finally parted, Nadia offered one last piece of advice. Whatever you read in that letter, remember that your grandmother loved you more than anything in her life. Everything she did, every choice she made, was to give you options she never had. Don't waste them. Catherine drove Evelyn back to Adrian's estate in silence, respecting the obvious turmoil on her face. When they arrived, Adrian was waiting in the foyer. Well? What did she want? Evelyn showed him the envelope. She had a letter from my grandmother. She's been holding it for 5 years. Adrian's expression darkened. And you didn't open it there, in front of her. Should I have? I don't know. It depends on what's in it. This could be Nadia's way of manipulating you, of creating loyalty to her by positioning herself as the keeper of your grandmother's secrets. Or it could just be a letter from my grandmother. In this world, nothing is ever just anything. Evelyn went to her room. She'd stopped thinking of it as a guest room weeks ago, and sat on the bed with the envelope. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside were 3 pages in her grandmother's handwriting, dated 6 months before her death. My dearest Evelyn, it began. If you're reading this, it means you've found your way into the world I tried so hard to shield you from. I'm sorry for that. I'd hoped the perfume would remain just a curious heirloom, that you'd never need to understand what it represented. But if circumstances have forced you to learn, then you deserve to know everything. Evelyn's vision blurred with tears as she continued reading. I was not a good woman by most standards. I did terrible things in service of people who did even worse. I justified it by telling myself I was surviving, that the world I'd entered gave me no other choice. But the truth is I had choices. I made them, and I've spent the last 40 years trying to atone for what I became. The letter went on to describe Elena's early years in the Volkov organization, confirming everything Adrian had told Evelyn and adding details that made her grandmother seem even more formidable. She'd been Mikhail Volkov's chief strategist, his most trusted advisor, the person who'd built the networks and systems that allowed his organization to thrive. But I was also the person who saw what was coming, the letter continued. Victor's coup, the violence that would follow, the purge that would kill dozens of people I knew and worked with. I could have stopped it. I had evidence. I had time. I had influence. But I chose not to act. Evelyn's hands tightened on the pages. I let it happen because I saw an opportunity. If the old guard was wiped out, if chaos reigned for a few months, I could disappear in the confusion. No one would have time to hunt for me when they were busy consolidating power or fighting for survival. So I stayed silent, and 57 people died, and I walked away clean. The confession was stunning in its honesty, brutal in its self-awareness. I tell you this not to ease my conscience. I don't deserve that ease. I tell you so you understand what this world demands. It will ask you to make impossible choices, to sacrifice others for your own survival, to become someone you never thought you could be. And the terrible secret is that sometimes you'll make those choices and feel nothing, or worse, you'll feel relieved. Evelyn had to stop reading, her vision too blurred to see the words. Her grandmother, kind, gentle. Grandma Elena, who made tea and told stories, had orchestrated the deaths of 57 people to cover her escape. After a few minutes, she continued reading. If you're in this world now, you're probably under someone's protection. Likely Adrian Vale. I've kept tabs on him over the years, and if he's still alive, he'll honor the debt he owes me. Trust him, but not completely. Trust no one completely, Evelyn. Not even yourself, especially when you start to enjoy the power this world offers. You have my intelligence, my instincts. I've watched you your whole life, seen how you read people, how you survive difficult circumstances with grace. You could be formidable in this world if you choose to be, but you could also be something I never managed. Good. Truly good. Not just good at rationalizing terrible choices. The money exists. The accounts Marcus Chen will find, the assets in various trusts, they're real, and they're yours if you want them. But they come with weight, with history, with blood. Before you touch them, decide who you want to be. Because once you claim that inheritance, once you step fully into this world, there's no going back to innocence. The letter ended with a simple line that broke Evelyn's heart. Whatever you choose, know that I loved you enough to give you the choice. That's more than anyone gave me. Love, Grandma. Evelyn sat in silence for a long time, the letter in her lap, tears streaming down her face. Her grandmother had been a murderer, a criminal, someone who'd orchestrated tragedy for personal gain, but she'd also been someone capable of love, of regret, of trying to build something better from the ashes of what she'd been. There was a knock at the door. Adrian's voice came through, careful and concerned. Evelyn, can I come in? Yes. He entered, took one look at her face, and sat beside her on the bed. What did it say? She handed him the letter. He read in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he set it aside and looked at her. I'm sorry you had to learn that about her. Did you know? About Victor's coup, about her letting it happen? I suspected. The timing of her disappearance was too perfect to be coincidence, but I never had proof, and honestly, I didn't want to know for certain. She was a monster. She was a survivor who made monstrous choices. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like this world just turns everyone into some version of a monster. And we all tell ourselves we're different, we're justified, we're doing what we have to do. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You're not wrong. This world does change people. It's changed me. It's changing you. The question isn't whether it changes you. It's whether you retain enough of yourself to recognize when you've gone too far. And how do you know when that is? You don't, not until it's too late. That's the trap. He turned to face her fully. But here's what I do know. Your grandmother spent 40 years trying to make up for what she'd done. She helped people, prevented violence, used her knowledge for good, even though it cost her everything. She could have lived in luxury off those accounts, but she chose poverty because she felt she'd earned nothing better. That kind of self-awareness, that kind of sustained effort at redemption, that means something. Does it? Does it actually erase 57 deaths? No, nothing erases that. But it means she was capable of growth, of change, of becoming better than she'd been. And you have the same capacity, except you're starting from a better place. You haven't killed anyone. You haven't orchestrated tragedies. You've just survived circumstances beyond your control and shown remarkable intelligence in doing so. Evelyn wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. I don't know what to do now. How to feel about any of this. Then don't decide yet. Sit with it, process it, and when you're ready, we'll figure out what comes next. He stood to leave, but Evelyn caught his hand. Adrian, thank you for being honest, for not trying to make it better than it is. You deserve honesty. It's the least I can give you. After he left, Evelyn lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone, she had her own again now, secured and encrypted by Adrian's people, buzzed with a text from the hospital. Your mother is asking for you. She's having a good day. Would you like to visit? Evelyn stared at the message, then at the letter from her grandmother, then back at the phone. Her mother was alive because Evelyn had accepted help from people like Adrian, had stepped into a world built on violence and secrets. Was that a monstrous choice? Or was it just survival? She texted back, I'll be there in an hour. Because whatever else was true, whatever moral complexity she was drowning in, her mother was alive and that was worth something. Maybe it was worth everything. The visit to her mother that afternoon changed something fundamental in Evelyn. She walked into that hospital room carrying the weight of her grandmother's confession, the moral complexity of everything she'd learned, and found her mother sitting up in bed, actually reading a book instead of sleeping through the pain. Evelyn! Her mother's face lit up with a brightness that had been absent for months. Look at me, actually awake for once. Doctor, Chen says the new treatment is working better than they hoped. Evelyn sat beside the bed, taking her mother's hand. It felt stronger than it had in weeks, less fragile. You look good, Mom. Really good. I feel almost human again. It's remarkable what proper medical care can do. Her mother's expression grew more serious. This benefactor of yours, this person who knew Grandma Elena, are you sure there are no strings attached? Nothing you're obligated to do in return? The question was so close to the truth that Evelyn almost laughed. There are always strings, Mom, but I'm handling them. That's what worries me. You shouldn't have to handle anything at your age. You should be living your life, finding love, building a future that's yours. I am building a future, just not the one I expected. Her mother studied her with those knowing eyes that had always seen too much. You remind me of her, you know, of my mother. Not just the way you look, but the way you carry yourself lately. Like you're holding secrets that weigh more than they should. Evelyn's throat tightened. Did Grandma Elena ever tell you anything about her life before she came to America? About what she really did? No, she was very careful about that. I knew there were things she didn't talk about, chapters of her life that were closed to me. When I was younger, I resented it. As I got older, I realized some silences are acts of love. What if the silence was hiding something terrible? What if she wasn't who we thought she was? Her mother squeezed Evelyn's hand. Everyone has parts of their past they're not proud of, sweetheart. What matters is who they choose to become. Your grandmother chose to be my mother, your grandmother. She chose to love us completely, even if she couldn't share everything. That's enough for me. The simplicity of that acceptance, the grace of it, made Evelyn's eyes burn with tears. I don't know if I can be that forgiving. You don't have to be. You just have to decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. The past is done, Evelyn. It's the future that you can still shape. Those words stayed with Evelyn as she returned to Adrian's estate that evening. She found him in his study, as usual, but this time he wasn't working. He was staring out the window at the gardens, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. Bad day? She asked from the doorway. He turned, and something in his expression made her pause. We need to talk. Sit down. The seriousness in his tone sent alarm through her system. She sat, her mind racing through possibilities. What's wrong? The FBI made contact today. They want to interview you about your grandmother, about your connection to me, about what you know regarding organized crime operations in South Florida. Evelyn's stomach dropped. When? They've requested you appear at their field office in 3 days. It's not optional. They have enough circumstantial evidence to compel cooperation. What kind of evidence? Your sudden change in circumstances. Your mother's transfer to an expensive private facility. Your residence here. The fact that you've been seen with known associates of various organizations. They're building a case, and you're either going to be a witness or a target. What do I tell them? Adrian set down his glass and moved to sit across from her. That's your decision. I can't make it for you, but you need to understand the options and their consequences. Tell me. Option 1. You cooperate fully. Tell them everything you know about me, about the Kozlovs, about what you've learned in the past month. They'll probably offer you immunity in exchange for testimony. You and your mother go into witness protection, you disappear, and you never see this world again. But I'd be betraying you after everything you've done for me. I'd survive. I've survived worse. And I'd understand. You'd be choosing safety over loyalty to someone you've known for a month. What's option 2? You tell them nothing. Claim ignorance. Refuse to cooperate beyond confirming basic facts they already know. You'll be subpoenaed, probably pressured, possibly charged with obstruction if they think you're lying. But you maintain loyalty to this world, to the people who've protected you. And option 3? Adrian's expression grew more complex. You tell them partial truth. Give them information that's already public record, or things they could find out anyway. You cooperate enough to seem helpful without actually compromising anyone. It's a tightrope walk, and if they catch you in inconsistencies, it's worse than refusing to talk at all. Evelyn stood and paced to the window, looking out at the same view Adrian had been contemplating. My grandmother spent 40 years hiding from this choice. She disappeared rather than face the question of which side she was on. Your grandmother had different circumstances. She was deep in criminal operations with direct knowledge of murders and crimes. You're not. You're someone who got pulled into this world through no fault of your own. Am I, though? No fault of my own? Evelyn turned to face him. I've been here a month, Adrian, a month, and I've solved problems for you, helped identify leaks, proven myself valuable to your organization. I'm not an innocent bystander anymore. I've made choices. Choices made under duress aren't the same as, don't patronize me. I had options. I could have refused your protection, could have gone to the FBI the first night. I chose this. I chose you. And now I have to live with that choice. Adrian stood as well, moving toward her but stopping just short of touching her. Then what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I need you to be honest with me about something. All right. If I cooperate with the FBI, if I give them information that damages you or your operations, what happens? Not to me. I know you'd never hurt me because of the debt to my grandmother. But what happens to the people I care about? My mother? The nurses who take care of her? Do they become targets for someone else seeking revenge? Adrian's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. So even if I wanted to cooperate, even if I thought it was the right thing to do morally, I can't. Because the second I do, everyone around me becomes vulnerable. That's the real trap, isn't it? Not loyalty or fear or any of the things people think. It's that once you're in, everyone you love is in too. Yes, that's exactly the trap. Then I'm already caught, whether I want to be or not. Over the next 2 days, Evelyn prepared for the FBI interview with the same intensity she'd brought to learning Adrian's world. Catherine coached her on interrogation techniques, how to answer questions without lying but without revealing anything useful. Marcus provided scenarios, playing the role of aggressive federal agent, while Evelyn practiced maintaining her composure. But it was Adrian who gave her the most important advice, late the night before the interview. Remember that they want something from you. That means you have leverage, even if it doesn't feel like it. They'll try to make you feel powerless, cornered, like cooperation is your only choice. But you always have choices. Even if they're all bad choices? Especially then, because choosing between bad options is still choosing. It's still power. The FBI field office was exactly as intimidating as Evelyn expected. Stark and institutional, with the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty. She was shown to an interview room and left alone for 20 minutes, a classic intimidation tactic that Catherine had warned her about. When the agents finally entered, there were two of them. The lead was a woman in her 40s named Special Agent Patricia Morrison, with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. Her partner was younger, a man named Special Agent David Chen, who watched Evelyn with the kind of assessment that suggested he was looking for tells. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Carter," Morrison began, settling into her chair with a file folder that was noticeably thick. "We appreciate your cooperation. I was told it wasn't optional. True, but attitude matters. We can make this easy or difficult depending on how forthcoming you are." "I'll answer what I can." Morrison opened the folder, revealing photographs. Evelyn recognized herself in several of them, entering Adrian's estate, at the hospital visiting her mother, at the restaurant with Nadia Kozlov. "You've had an interesting month, Ms. Carter. 1 month ago, you were a waitress struggling to make ends meet. Today, you're living in a mansion owned by Adrian Vale and associating with known members of organized crime families. That's quite a transformation." "I met someone who knew my grandmother. They offered to help with my mother's medical expenses. I accepted." "Adrian Vale is not a philanthropist, Ms. Carter. He doesn't help people out of kindness. What does he want from you?" "You'd have to ask him that." "We're asking you, what is your relationship with Adrian Vale?" Evelyn took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "He knew my grandmother decades ago. He felt he owed her a debt. When I came to his attention, he offered protection and assistance. That's the extent of it." "Protection from what? What are you in danger from?" "I don't know. He said my grandmother's past created complications. I'm still trying to understand what that means." Agent Chen leaned forward. "Come on, Ms. Carter, we're not stupid. You've been living in Vale's house for a month. You've been seen at meetings with the Kozlov family. You're clearly being groomed for something. What is it?" "I honestly don't know. I'm just trying to take care of my mother and survive circumstances I didn't ask for." Morrison pulled out another photograph, this one showing Evelyn in the library at Adrian's estate, clearly visible through a window. "What were you doing here? This was taken a week ago." "Reading. Adrian has an extensive library." "What were you reading?" "Business journals mostly, financial reports. I was trying to understand how his legitimate enterprises operate." "Why would you need to understand that?" "Curiosity. If someone's supporting my mother's medical care, I wanted to know where the money was coming from, whether it was legitimate." It was a good answer, plausible and defensible. Morrison's expression showed she recognized it as such. "Let's talk about your grandmother. Elena Petrov. What do you know about her life before she came to America?" "Very little. She didn't talk about it." "Did you know she was associated with Mikhail Volkov's organization in the early 1980s? "Not until recently." "And when you learned this, how did you react?" "I was shocked, confused. My grandmother was a seamstress, not a criminal." "Was she, though? Because we have records suggesting Elena Petrov was considerably more than a seamstress. She was Volkov's chief strategist, his most trusted advisor. She knew everything about his operations." "If you say so, I didn't know her that way." Morrison leaned back, changing tactics. "Your mother is at Mercy Heights receiving experimental cancer treatment that costs approximately $40,000 a month. Who's paying for that?" "Adrian arranged it." "In exchange for what?" "Nothing that I'm aware of." "You expect us to believe that Adrian Vale is spending $500,000 a year on your mother's medical care out of the goodness of his heart?" "I expect you to believe that I don't know his motivations. I'm not privy to his business decisions or his reasoning. I'm just grateful my mother is getting the care she needs." The interview continued for 3 hours, Morrison and Chen circling back to the same questions from different angles, trying to catch Evelyn in contradictions or force her to reveal information she was withholding. But Catherine's training held. Evelyn answered consistently, admitted to things they could already prove, and claimed ignorance about everything else. Finally, Morrison closed her folder with visible frustration. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Carter. Adrian Vale is under investigation for multiple federal crimes. Anyone associated with him is at risk of being charged as an accessory or accomplice. If you know something and you're not telling us, you're exposing yourself to serious legal jeopardy." "I understand that, but I can't tell you what I don't know." Then let me be very clear. We're going to continue investigating. We're going to subpoena your phone records, your financial records, everything. And if we find evidence that you've been lying to us today, the consequences will be severe. Do you understand? I understand. You're free to go, but we'll be in touch. Evelyn stood on shaking legs, maintained her composure until she was out of the building, and then nearly collapsed against Catherine's car where the security chief was waiting. How bad was it? Catherine asked. Bad. They know I'm lying. They just can't prove what about. How long do we have before they find something? Depends on how deep they dig and how careful we've been. Adrian's operations are layered specifically to withstand federal investigation, but nothing is perfect. The drive back to the estate felt longer than usual. Evelyn's mind raced through everything she'd said, analyzing for mistakes, for anything that could come back to haunt her. Adrian was waiting when they arrived, his expression tense. Well, I didn't give them anything they couldn't find out on their own, but they're going to keep digging. I know. We're already moving sensitive operations, changing protocols, assuming they have surveillance on everything we do. He studied her face. You held up well. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, but it's done now. Not quite. There's going to be fallout from this. The FBI putting pressure on you means they're escalating their investigation into me. That makes you more valuable to them as a potential witness, which makes you more of a target for anyone who wants to prevent that testimony. So I'm in more danger now than before? Potentially, which is why we need to make a decision. He led her to his study, where Marcus and Catherine were already waiting. On the desk was another folder, this one containing what looked like travel documents. What is this? Evelyn asked. A way out. I have a property in Portugal, completely clean, no connection to any of my operations. You and your mother could go there, live quietly, safely. The FBI can't touch you if you're not in the country, and my enemies won't know where to find you. Evelyn stared at the documents. Passport, visa, property deeds. Everything she'd need to disappear. You're sending me away? I'm offering you an option. You've proven yourself valuable. You've earned respect, but you didn't ask for this life. If you want out, if you want to take your mother and live in peace, I'll make it happen. It was the escape she should have wanted, the clean break from all of this. But as Evelyn looked at the documents, all she could think about was her grandmother's letter. Elena had run, had spent 40 years in hiding, and died with nothing but regrets and a bottle of perfume. No. Adrian looked surprised. No? I'm not running. My grandmother ran, and it cost her everything. Her power, her identity, her ability to live openly. I'm not making the same choice. Evelyn, you need to think about this carefully. Staying means accepting that you're part of this world permanently. There's no halfway, no keeping one foot in normal life. I know that. I've known it since the first night you locked those diner doors. Maybe I've known it since I put on that perfume. She met his eyes steadily. I'm staying. I'm claiming my grandmother's legacy. All of it. The money, the connections, the responsibility. I'm done being someone things happen to. I'm going to be someone who makes things happen. Catherine and Marcus exchanged glances. Adrian's expression was unreadable. You understand what you're committing to? He asked quietly. This isn't a temporary arrangement anymore. This is your life. I understand, and I'm choosing it. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Why? What changed? Evelyn thought about her mother's words at the hospital, about choosing what kind of person to be going forward. She thought about her grandmother's letter, about 57 deaths and 40 years of atonement. She thought about the satisfaction she'd felt solving problems for Adrian, the rush of power when Marcus started respecting her, the transformation she'd seen in her own reflection. Because I'm good at this. Because for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm using my full potential instead of just surviving. And because someone needs to carry on what my grandmother started, not the violence, not the crime, but the protection. She spent 40 years helping people from the shadows. I want to do that, but from a position of strength. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she'd never heard before. If you do this, if you truly commit to this path, there are things you need to know. Secrets I've kept from you because I thought you were temporary. But if you're staying, if you're claiming this legacy, You need to understand exactly what your grandmother built and what she left behind. Tell me." He nodded to Marcus and Catherine, who both left the room, closing the door behind them. Once they were alone, Adrian moved to a painting on the wall, a landscape that looked expensive but unremarkable. He pressed on the frame in a specific pattern, and the painting swung open to reveal a safe. From inside, he pulled a small leather journal, worn with age and use. Your grandmother didn't leave her knowledge in physical documents for Marcus Chen to find. She left it in code, hidden in plain sight. This journal contains 40 years of information about operations, about people, about networks that span the globe. It's written in a cipher that only someone with specific knowledge could decode. What kind of knowledge? Things she would have told you if she'd had time. Family stories, personal memories, details about her life that only her granddaughter would know. The cipher is designed so that someone investigating her past couldn't crack it, but someone who loved her could. Evelyn took the journal with trembling hands. The leather was soft, aged, and when she opened it, she saw pages filled with what looked like Russian poetry and random numbers. "Where did you get this?" "From Nadia. She gave it to me 2 days ago, said your grandmother left it with her along with that letter. Nadia was supposed to give it to you only if you proved you were serious about staying in this world. The lunch, the letter, those were tests. You passed." So Nadia has been manipulating this entire situation? Nadia has been honoring your grandmother's wishes. Elena planned all of this, Evelyn. The perfume that would activate when you needed help. The letter that would test your resolve. The journal that would give you power if you chose to claim it. She was protecting you even in death, but also preparing you for the possibility that you might be like her. Evelyn sat down heavily, the journal in her lap. "What's in here? What did she record?" "I don't know. I can't decode it. But based on what your grandmother knew when she was active, it likely contains information about current operations, about people in power who owe debts or harbor secrets, about networks that have existed for decades. It's leverage, Evelyn. Real, substantial leverage that could reshape power dynamics across multiple organizations. That's what the FBI really wants. That's why they're pushing so hard." "Partly. They also genuinely want to build a case against me. But yes, if they knew this journal existed, they'd do whatever it took to get it." Evelyn looked down at the innocuous-looking book that contained her grandmother's secrets. The power it represented was staggering. The ability to expose, to protect, to manipulate organizations that had operated in shadows for generations. "My grandmother carried this knowledge for 40 years. It must have been a tremendous burden." "It was, but she used it wisely. When she saw someone about to be killed unjustly, she'd intervene anonymously. When she knew about an operation that would hurt innocent people, she'd find ways to sabotage it. She became a ghost in the machine, subtly influencing events without ever exposing herself. And now she wants me to do the same? She wanted you to have the choice. Use it, destroy it, lock it away and never look at it again. That's up to you. But she wanted you to have the power to decide." Evelyn stood and moved to the window, watching the sun set over Adrian's gardens. Behind her was a life of safety but exile. Before her was a life of power but danger. And in her hands was a journal that represented everything her grandmother had been, the good and the terrible, the protection and the violence, the love and the calculated manipulation. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to decode this, to understand what I'm really holding, to figure out how to use it without becoming what my grandmother was at her worst." "Take all the time you need. But Evelyn, once you start decoding that journal, once you know what's in it, you can't unknow it. Make sure you're ready for that burden before you begin." The next weeks were transformative in ways Evelyn couldn't have predicted. She spent her days visiting her mother, whose health continued to improve to the point where doctors started using words like remission and unexpected recovery. She spent her evenings slowly working through her grandmother's journal, using memories and stories to decode the cipher. The information inside was staggering. Her grandmother had documented not just criminal operations, but political corruption, corporate malfeasance, and connections between legitimate power and underground networks. She'd kept records of who owed what to whom, which politicians were compromised, which business empires were built on illegal foundations. But more than that, she documented acts of kindness, times when she'd intervened to save lives, to prevent violence, to protect the vulnerable. The journal was a map of her grandmother's soul, The darkness and the light, the terrible choices and the desperate attempts at redemption. Evelyn shared some of this information with Adrian, carefully, strategically. Information about current threats to his operations, about rivals planning moves against him, about opportunities for alliance or expansion. She proved her value not through violence or crime, but through intelligence, through understanding patterns and predicting outcomes. The FBI investigation continued, but lost momentum. Without Evelyn's cooperation, they couldn't build the case they needed. Eventually, Morrison called to inform her that while she remained a person of interest, they were shifting their focus elsewhere. "This isn't over, Ms. Carter," the agent said. "We know you're hiding something. Eventually, we'll figure out what." "I'm sure you'll try," Evelyn replied calmly, and ended the call. 3 months after that first night in the diner, Evelyn stood in Adrian's study with Catherine, Marcus, and Adrian himself, reviewing an opportunity that had presented itself. A smaller organization was facing pressure from a larger rival and had reached out for assistance. "We should help them," Evelyn said, reviewing the file, "not for profit, but for positioning. If we establish ourselves as protectors of smaller operations, we build loyalty that money can't buy." "Well, that's exactly what your grandmother would have said," Adrian observed. Then she was right. Power isn't just about force or money. It's about trust, about being someone people turn to when they need help. Marcus nodded approvingly. "I'll set up the meeting." After everyone left, Adrian remained behind with Evelyn. "You've changed," he said simply. "Not just in skill, but in essence. You're not the scared waitress anymore." "No. I'm Elena Petrov's granddaughter, and I'm finally understanding what that means." "Are you happy with who you're becoming?" Evelyn considered the question honestly. "I don't know if happy is the right word, but I'm purposeful. I'm using abilities I didn't know I had. I'm protecting my mother, helping people who need help, and yes, sometimes making morally complex choices, but I'm making them consciously, not because I have no other options." Adrian moved closer, and for the first time, the careful distance he'd always maintained seemed to dissolve. "You know that what's developed between us goes beyond protection and strategy." "I know. I've spent 20 years avoiding emotional attachments. Told myself it was safer, smarter, the only way to survive in this world. But you've made me question that." Evelyn felt her heart race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm tired of keeping everyone at arm's length. I'm saying that you're extraordinary, not because of your bloodline or your grandmother's legacy, but because of who you've chosen to become despite all of it. I'm saying that if you're going to build a life in this world, I'd like to be part of it, not just as your protector, but as something more." The confession hung between them, vulnerable and honest in a way she'd never heard from him. "Adrian, You don't have to answer now. I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide about your future, about how you want to use your power, I'll support it. But I wanted you to know that you don't have to do it alone." Evelyn looked at this man who'd transformed her life, who'd shown her strength she didn't know she possessed, who'd honored a debt to a dead woman by protecting her granddaughter with everything he had. "I don't want to do it alone," she said quietly. "I spent my whole life alone, struggling, surviving on my own. I'm tired of it. If you're offering partnership, real partnership where we build something together, then yes, I want that." The smile that crossed Adrian's face was genuine and warm, transforming his usual severity into something almost boyish. "Then we'll build it. Something better than what came before. Something that honors your grandmother's memory without repeating her mistakes." He pulled her close, and for the first time since that night in the diner, Evelyn felt truly safe. Not because she was protected, but because she was powerful. Not because she was hiding, but because she was choosing to stand in the open and claim her place in this world. 6 months later, Evelyn Carter, now publicly known as Evelyn Petrov Carter, acknowledging both her grandmother's legacy and her own identity, stood in a private room at a different hotel, meeting with representatives from 5 different organizations. Her mother sat beside her in remission and stronger than she'd been in years, serving as both support and reminder of why Evelyn had made the choices she'd made. Adrian stood at the back of the room, present but not dominating, making it clear that this was Evelyn's show. "Thank you all for coming," Evelyn began, her voice steady and commanding. "I've asked you here because I have information that affects all of your operations. Information my grandmother collected over 40 years and left for me to use wisely." She saw the attention sharpen, the wariness increase. I'm not using it to threaten or extort you. I'm using it to propose something different. An alliance of organizations that protects mutual interests, that prevents the kind of violence that brings federal attention, that operates with intelligence instead of brute force. Nadia Kozlov smiled slightly from her seat. Your grandmother proposed something similar in 1982. Mikhail Volkov rejected it. That's one of the reasons she left. I know. I've read her journals. She was ahead of her time. But times have changed. Federal investigations are more sophisticated. Law enforcement coordination is better. And operating in isolated silos makes everyone more vulnerable. Together, sharing intelligence and resources, we're all stronger. Over the next 2 hours, Evelyn laid out her vision. Not a criminal empire, but a network of mutual protection and shared information. Organizations that would operate independently but coordinate on threats, that would settle disputes through negotiation instead of violence, that would help each other avoid federal attention. It was ambitious, possibly naive, but it was also strategic and well-reasoned. She'd learned from her grandmother's mistakes, had studied decades of history, and was proposing something that served everyone's interests. By the end of the meeting, she had commitments from 3 of the 5 organizations, with the other 2 promising to consider it. You're building something real, Adrian said afterward, pride evident in his voice. Something that could actually change how this world operates. Or I'm going to fail spectacularly and make enemies of everyone, Evelyn replied, but she was smiling. Either way, you're doing it on your own terms. That's what matters. That evening, Evelyn returned to Adrian's estate. Their estate now, as he'd added her name to the deed. She found her mother in the garden, reading in the fading light. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you think Grandma would be proud of what I'm doing? Or would she be horrified that I didn't run away like she did? Her mother set down her book and patted the bench beside her. Evelyn sat, and they looked out at the gardens together. I think she'd be proud that you made your own choice. She spent 40 years running from who she'd been, trying to erase that part of herself. But you're not erasing anything, you're transforming it, taking what she was and making it into something better. That's not repeating her mistakes, that's honoring her complexity. I'm scared sometimes that I'll become her at her worst, that I'll make terrible choices and justify them the way she did. Then don't justify them. Be honest about the costs, about the compromises, about the moral weight of what you're doing. Your grandmother's real mistake wasn't what she did. It was lying to herself about why she did it. As long as you stay honest with yourself, you'll be okay. Evelyn leaned against her mother's shoulder, feeling younger than she had in months. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that you found a way to save me. Whatever complicated world you're in now, whatever choices you've made, they gave me time. Time to see you become this strong, capable woman. That's worth everything. Later that night, Evelyn stood on the balcony of her bedroom, looking out at the Miami lights. Adrian joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Thinking deep thoughts? He asked. Thinking about endings and beginnings, about how one spray of perfume changed everything. Do you regret it? If you could go back, would you make different choices? Evelyn thought about the scared waitress she'd been, drowning in debt and desperation. Thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, capable, morally complex, but purposeful. No, I wouldn't change it. This is who I was always meant to be. I just needed the right circumstances to discover it. Your grandmother knew. That's why she left you the perfume, the journal, the path to find this life. She saw in you what you're only now seeing in yourself. A criminal? A survivor who refuses to be a victim. Someone who takes impossible circumstances and transforms them into opportunities. Someone who protects the people she loves, no matter the cost. Evelyn turned in his arms to face him. Is that what you see when you look at me? That and more. I see my future. I see partnership. I see the person who's made me believe that this life doesn't have to be lonely and isolated. She kissed him then, with all the passion and complexity of everything they'd been through, everything they'd built together. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian smiled. We have that meeting with the Chicago organization next week. They're nervous about your proposal, worried it diminishes their autonomy. Then we'll convince them otherwise. We'll show them that cooperation doesn't mean submission, that sharing information doesn't mean losing power. We, I'm not doing this alone anymore, remember? I remember. They stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city that held both their future and their past. Somewhere out there, other people were making their own choices, building their own empires, surviving their own circumstances. The world kept turning, indifferent to individual struggles and transformations. But in this moment, Evelyn Carter, Elena Petrov's granddaughter, Adrian Vale's partner, her mother's daughter, stood exactly where she was meant to be. Not hiding in poverty like her grandmother had, not isolated by power like Adrian had been, but standing in the open, claiming her legacy, transforming it into something that honored the past while building something new. The perfume bottle sat on her dresser inside, empty now. She'd worn it occasionally in those early weeks, letting the scent remind her of where she'd come from. But she didn't need it anymore. She'd become her own signal, her own statement, her own power. And as the Miami night wrapped around them, warm and humid and full of possibility, Evelyn smiled, not because her life was simple or safe or morally uncomplicated, but because it was hers, fully, completely, irrevocably hers. The waitress who'd sprayed on a dead woman's perfume was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who'd inherited not just wealth or connections, but the wisdom to use both carefully. Someone who'd learned that real power wasn't about force or fear, but about intelligence and strategy and the willingness to make hard choices while remaining honest about their costs. Someone who'd discovered that the blood did indeed remember, even when the mind had forgotten. Someone who'd chosen not to run from her legacy, but to transform it into something worth claiming. And as Adrian pulled her close again, as the city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds, Evelyn thought about her grandmother's final words in that letter. Whatever you choose, know that I loved you enough to give you the choice. Elena Petrov had given her granddaughter the rarest gift, not freedom from consequences, but the power to choose which consequences to accept. And Evelyn had chosen. Not blindly, not desperately, but with full knowledge of what she was becoming and why. The future stretched before her, uncertain and dangerous and full of possibility. But she would face it not as a victim of circumstance, but as an architect of her own destiny. And that finally was enough.